Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. In accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville City Council may be conducted via remote participation. Please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville's website and will be available for future review. And colleagues, just a heads up, Councillor Klingon is joining us remotely. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor Davis.
Here.
Councillor Scott.
Present.
Councillor Strezzo.
Present.
Councillor Klingon.
Present.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Burnley.
Present.
Councillor Gomez-Moacad.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Present.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With all 11 councillors present, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. Pursuant to our Rule 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We will begin this meeting with a moment of silence. Are there councillors wishing to remember community members tonight? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's with a very heavy heart that I bring news and ask us all to keep in our thoughts tonight Rose Donna Caterino, who passed last month. Rose D. Caterino was an absolute fixture in the neighborhood. She passed away at the age of 93 years old. And, moved to Somerville Ave, the Union Square area, back 70 years ago and has lived in the house at 5 Rossmore ever since. She was, when I think about Rose, who leaves behind an extremely large family, I think about somebody who cared deeply about the neighborhood that she moved to and made her home. She advocated many, many years ago for trees to be planted on Somerville Ave, and as somebody that I've known for a number of years, she's the reason why I brought the original order for taking for the American Legion post down on Somerville Ave, that 217 Somerville Ave. She lived right across the street from it, and just said we just need a nice place to sit. And that, I'm so proud that the city did take that land, but it breaks my heart to know that she passed without ever actually seeing her park come into being. So, again, an enormous family and just an enormous presence in the neighborhood. When I think of her, it's her devotion both to green spaces and she was very devout in her faith. So I ask that we keep her in our minds tonight and have a moment of silence for Miss Rose. And if all's right in the world, hopefully maybe we can name that park for her when we get it done someday. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like to ask that we remember John Nunziato. You may be familiar with Nunziato Park on the corner of Vinyl and Summer. John Nunziato was born in 1931 and passed away at the age of 91. I did not have the chance to meet him, but I wanted to remember him tonight because he was a very Somerville person. I'm going to read a bit from his obituary. He was predeceased by the love of his life, Eunice Nunziato, and he lived a storied and meaningful life that began in Somerville in 1931. John was a high school star in football, basketball, and baseball. At Boston University, he was a 3-sport star and the only student athlete to earn 9 varsity letters. He also received a master's degree in education from Boston University and was inducted to the BU Hall of Fame in 1991. After college, Mr. Nunziato served in the 82nd Infantry Division, and in 1957, he returned to Somerville as a teacher, administrator, and coach of the football team. He was later inducted into the Somerville Hall of Fame. And in 1997, Somerville dedicated Nunziato Field. So I'd ask that we keep the Nunziato family in our hearts tonight. And with that, everyone who's able, if you'll please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you all. You may be seated. All right, colleagues, so we have a number of items to take up early, and just as a note to the public and to colleagues, we take these up in order of if there are speakers from the public here, and then if there are members of our staff that are here, and if there are items that were left unfinished at a previous meeting, we're going to take one of those up. So we're going to start with item 10.18. which is a petition from the Arts at the Armory, which has over 1,000 signatures. We have a speaker for that. After that, Councillor Burnley has two items, 4.36 and 4.37, and we have public speakers on those. Councillor McLaughlin and Kelly have an item related to book ban efforts, 4.33, and there's public speakers for that. After that, Councillor Wilson is asked to take two finance items for immediate consideration, and we have staff present to answer any questions. Those are 7.3 and 10.13. After that, there was an Eversource item laid on the table, that's 5.1, and after that, executive session minutes release, that's 8.1, and we have staff here for that. With that, next item, please.
So we'll first take up item 1.3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 24th, 2023.
We'll lay those on the table for approval.
And item 1.4, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of August 31st, 2023.
With no discussion, we'll lay those on the table.
And that will bring us to item 10.18, a public communication from 1,136 individuals, 556 residents, submitting comments regarding the Armory building.
Excellent. Thank you all. So there was a lengthy discussion, I know, in Housing and Community Development earlier this week. But with the submission of this petition, with, again, over 1,000 signatures, the City Council wanted to offer an opportunity for Arts at the Armory to address us tonight. So please, I see their Executive Director is here. If you would please introduce yourself for our record.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Stephanie Scherf, and I'm a co-director and the CEO at the Center for Arts at the Armory. So I've been in my position for about 4+ years now, and I'm here tonight representing our organization, which is governed by a board of directors and led day to day by myself and Jess White, our co-director and COO. So I'm also representing the interests of the community which we serve, which includes artists, cultural workers, community members, audience members, small businesses, farmers market, shoppers, and more. And they're all concerned that they're going to lose what they have in partnership with us through this Armory master planning process that the City of Somerville has taken on. So our leadership has been moved to represent what our community has told us that they want. So following on the heels of a community meeting that we organized on August 15th, attended by 100 people, we completed a petition signed by over 1,000 people, many of whom also chose to write comments. The petition and an accompanying letter, as well as a recording of the August 15th meeting, has now been delivered to the Mayor, Somerville City Council, Somerville Arts Council, and the Armory Master Plan consultant Create Today, Tom Galligani, Rachel Nadkarni, and the Somerville Armory Master Plan Advisory Committee. That petition, as has been already mentioned, has been included in the Council's meeting packet tonight. So that petition urged that the City of Somerville do the following 4 things. Number 1, abandon the proposed Model 1 for the Armory building, which would adopt the city as owner and operator model and force the current tenants out. Number 2, adopt a third-party operator model for the Armory building that would include developing and issuing an RFP that third-party operators interested in managing the building could respond to. Number 3, develop and issue an RFP for prospective arts and culture tenants interested in securing a lease on a space inside the Armory building. And number 4, work with the consultant contracted by the city and current Armory tenants to create a governance model and governance committee that would develop, issue, and respond to both RFPs above. So it's been 6 weeks since our August 15th community meeting, and that recording of that meeting is available online on our website. So to date, we haven't received any response from city administration on the meeting or on the petition. Meanwhile, the majority of city councilors have individually individually reached out to us about the situation and offered support, which we really appreciate. The press and the community are also certainly talking about the situation. So 1,000 members of our community have given us a mandate to fix the current situation we're in so that we can continue to serve them and to carry the Armory Master Plan and the future of the building forward. But of course, we have to be given a seat at the table. So after 2+ years, we just don't see that the city has the capacity to deliver the Armory Master Plan or secure the productive use of the building without us. We are asking to have a leadership role along with any other Armory Arts tenants who want to be involved in creating the future of the Armory building. So it's going to take courage and humility on the part of the City Council and City Administration to enact such a reset 2+ years into owning the building, and after investing a lot of money in an out-of-town consultant. But we truly believe that that's the only way forward. So last week, I was invited by Councillor Strezzo to speak at the Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. So I came to that meeting with hope, but I left discouraged. We've done a lot of work to organize community consensus, and yet the response from City Administration at the committee meeting indicated confusion, contradiction, lack of comprehension and transparency, and kicking the can down the road. The collective input is not being heard or acted on, as far as we know. The committee meeting further demonstrated that the city government is simply not capable of carrying out this process. So since the building was renovated and reopened in 2008, Arts at the Armory was always the building manager until we had to step down from that role during the pandemic due to lack of resources and staff present in the building. So going back in time, it would have been highly plausible for the city to work with us once they took the building by eminent domain, making an interim agreement as the logical building manager. Instead, what the city's approach over the last 2+ years has been as we don't have the time, we don't have the people, we don't have the expertise or the resources for the Armory, but they've held up the process because they are the landowner and they ultimately have the control. So we've given City Administration a chance. It's been over 2+ years. The Armory Master Plan process started over a year ago, and something really has to change. We are giving the City of Somerville an opportunity to turn their involvement with the Armory building into a win for everyone. The master plan keeps referencing, quote, a vision of success for the Armory. Although not every inch of the building is currently activated, what the administration and the consultant are missing is that the building is already a success. So let's secure, enhance, and sustain future success from that starting point. Arts at the Armory has already done a lot of the work that the Armory Master Plan sought to do. So let us help you and share how we've evolved over 20 years to serve the community's needs. I think we need to start the Armory Master Plan over with a reset involving all of the Armory tenants who want to be involved. If needed, we can find a local consultant with whom we can work hand in hand. We can move the process along. We truly can fix the situation in a democratic way. That's what the community has told us that they want. And I think that with everything else going on, City Administration would be relieved to be unburdened of this. So to us, it's not a difficult choice. We greatly appreciated Councillor Gomez-Muakad's work on this issue. She put in 3 orders that were taken up at last week's Housing and Community Development meeting. A few items contained within those orders were addressed, but much is still pending, and I'm not sure if that's going to be taken up for discussion tonight or not, but I just wanted to highlight a few of them and also just thank you for your advocacy, Councillor Gomez-Muakad, and I read your newsletter today, and it was really, really excellent. So thank you for all your service on behalf of the community. So Order 1, it's stated that the Director of the Arts Council and the Director of Economic Development take the steps outlined within relative to the Armory building. So I labeled them A, B, C. So A says immediately engage the arts at the Armory and other arts tenants in the planning process for the Armory building and include them in the Master Plan Advisory Committee. So we haven't heard, we didn't really talk about this. This was not really addressed. I did mention this at the committee meeting last week, but so far no word on what the plans are to do this, the timeline, budget, et cetera, who would be engaged to facilitate this. Jumping over to C, explain why 3 of the 5 operating models listed in the master plan were not considered and how this decision came about. It's still not clear how this decision was made, but it seems that the city administration, someone within city administration made this, but we may never know more about it. Jumping to Order 2, that the Director of Economic Development, A, provide an inventory of spaces and the potential use for those spaces in the Armory as part of the Armory Master Planning process. I think the community deserves to see a detailed inventory of what's inside the Armory building in terms of spaces. What is the square footage and characteristics of the spaces? What are some of the suggested arts uses of those spaces? B, immediately renew all existing use and occupancy agreements for the Armory that have expired and extend them for an additional 24 months. So we still do not have a use and occupancy agreement that is signed, even though on June 30th I hand-delivered a replica of the last UNO agreement that we signed to City Hall for signature. So how is City Administration going to be held accountable to get this done? C, present to this council an interim occupancy model for the Armory by October 2023. So we're looking at about four weeks or so. So who's going to be responsible for this, and how will the city be held accountable? Jumping to E, explain the increase in any use and occupancy fees for Armory tenants starting in June 2021. So we did not talk about that at the committee meeting. 7 months late, we received a use and occupancy agreement for our signature in which our rent amount had nearly doubled. And it's as though we are being asked to subsidize the rest of the building that is largely sitting empty, including the prime real estate that the Arts Council is using for temporary activation while not paying rent. So I'd advise the City Council to ask City Administration why there's this missed opportunity, losing out both on rent and also artists that could have been served through the use of the space. So there's a lot of pending issues left from the orders that Councillor Gomez-Muacad put forward, and I hope that we can work through those and get some answers. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I will leave it at that.
Of course. Thank you, and thank you to the board members that are here as well. Are there questions, comments from colleagues? Councillor Gomez-Muacad.
I just want to reiterate the importance of, a lot of the orders I put are based on my experience as a project manager of looking at a future space and how you analyze it. And I think we've skipped a lot of these steps. First of all, if you have users there, you always involve your users, and especially when they have experience with the space. We have a large performance space, we have other users. That has been skipped, and I think that's just bad. I'm going to say it's just bad practice. I also want to reiterate, that's why I have things like inventory of spaces, et cetera. And I think we sometimes want to say, we have to be honest and say, we did something wrong, let's start all over again. It's important that I think we're at that point. I want to there was a beautiful note in there from the Haitian community of how they've brought these Haitian musicians who wouldn't have a place in other occasions. This is a jewel, this is a gem, and I want to reiterate over and over, if we are truly about diversity and inclusion, this is a place, the arts is where it happens. I believe the Arts at the Armory is doing a great job at doing this. Maybe I'm biased, one of my favorite artists played there, another one's playing on the 29th, I'll do a shout out on that. So I just want the city, let's collaborate, let's start over, let's not do the traditional political thing where we go in self-defense, I did this, you did that. So I asked them to really, in the next month, bring the tenants together. I'm happy in the next 3 months, I'm happy to work my butt off to facilitate this, because I think it's a gem to have this here. So I hope you listen. I'm not here to blame anyone, but I think we do need to start over. Thanks.
And Councillor, I want to thank you for all the work that you have put into this. On behalf of the City Council, obviously this physically exists in Ward 5, but the Armory is incredibly important to the entire city. So thank you for all the work that you've done. And I'll just reiterate something I've said, at the community meeting, at previous meetings here. The reason that the City Council agreed to take the Armory by eminent domain was to protect the Arts at the Armory and the existing tenants. And the idea that it's kind of gotten to this point is really disappointing and frustrating, but I maintain optimism that we are going to get through this and that we are going to have the Armory be the home of the Center of the Arts and as many of the tenants as want to stay. I really do believe that, and that is certainly what I'll be working towards. So thank you all for your service to Somerville and for being here tonight, and to every single person who signed this petition, thank you as well. Further comments? All right, thank you. We'll mark that as on file.
And the next item that we'll take out of order is item 4.36, a resolution by Councilor Burnley in support of a prison moratorium and elder parole.
Councilor Kelly and Scott would like to sign on. Councilor Burnley, did you want to take up these items at the same time or sequentially? Okay. Please.
Thank you. Through the chair and to my colleagues, I'm presenting this resolution in solidarity with incarcerated women in MCI Framingham, our Commonwealth Singular Women's Prison. I believe that it is incumbent on us to break down the mental barriers that obfuscate the deep connections between our communities and those who live behind bars. 1 in 5 women incarcerated at MCI Framingham is a pretrial detainee from Middlesex County, our county, who could not afford to pay the freedom extortion that is bail. Despite their difficult circumstances, these women have simultaneously been organizing for livable conditions and against the expansion of the carceral state. On June 26, for the first time in our Commonwealth's legislative history, 22 incarcerated women testified live from MCI Framingham via Zoom to our state legislators in support of passing 2 bills, S 1979 and H 1795, that would require a 5-year prison and jail construction moratorium. This was necessary because rather than repairing the crumbling infrastructure, our previous Republican governor, Charlie Baker, proposed the construction of a new $50 million prison. This proposal is outrageous on several levels, including the fact that it flies in the face of logic. Over the last decade, the population at this institution decreased from over 600 incarcerated women to roughly 200 presently. Over a dozen of these women are over the age of 60, and several of them are over 70 years old. Despite the organizing by these women in organizations like Families for Justice as Healing, Governor Healy has yet to publicly support the prison moratorium bills or S 1547 and H 2397, which would establish an elder parole board. Residents in Somerville understand that investments in our communities, infrastructure, housing, and care do far more to make us safe than the failed policies of mass incarceration. Instead of spending $50 million on a new prison, I would like to ask the city of Somerville to call upon our governor to publicly support these bills and that promote decarceration through a prison moratorium and elder parole as a means of gender, racial, and class justice. And I would like to also sponsor Michaela Kaplan and the homie to speak on these matters as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. Welcome. If you'd please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Evan Drucker-Shardle. I am a Somerville resident up on Powderhouse Boulevard in Ward 7. And I'm very happy that the council is taking up this resolution tonight. I strongly support the prison moratorium, the elder parole board. I'm one of hundreds of Somerville residents who have taken action in support of the prison moratorium. And I encourage the city council to vote favorably.
Cool. Hi. Yeah, thank you all so much and especially Councilor Burnley for taking this up. My name is Michaela Kaplan. I'm a Somerville Ward 6 resident, a lifetime Massachusetts resident, and my day job is organizing for TRUA, which is a rabbinic call for human rights, a human rights organization. We represent over 200 rabbis and cantors in Massachusetts. Following the leadership of directly affected communities, our cluster's statewide legislative priorities have included the prison moratorium and elder parole. Over 50 Massachusetts rabbis in the state have taken action, including Somerville Rabbi Eliana Jacobowitz, who wanted to come today and is still recovering from high holiday prep. We're really grateful that Somerville is leading the way for municipalities to show support for this legislation, especially given that over 200 Somerville residents have taken action to support this campaign, and hundreds more have expressed support and sent emails to state leadership when we've run canvases in Somerville. As Councillor Burnley said, the prison moratorium would create a 5-year pause on major jail and prison construction and expansion. It would not prevent essential repairs. A 5-year pause would allow us an opportunity to focus on decarceration using tools like elder parole and clemency and many others. Give us time to implement alternatives and invest in communities most affected by incarceration. It would also pause the state's plan to build a $50 million women's prison that would replace MCI Framingham. This was mentioned, but it's really important to note that 22 women in a fairly historic moment testified in support of the moratorium. They spoke to the harrowing conditions that they live in and stressed that those conditions were a result of DOC negligence and mismanagement, lack of funding for beneficial programming, and abysmal medical and mental health care for women inside. A new prison cannot solve these problems. Incarcerated women propose alternatives like independent living housing, where they could be held accountable while they work, serve their communities, and address the root causes of their incarceration with services and support. So Trua rabbis, hundreds of Somerville residents, myself included, we're supporting the call from directly impacted women to reimagine our communities, not reimagine prisons. During the next 5 years, we want public resources investing in housing, treatment, healthcare, childcare, education, and the MBTA. Our state must pass elder parole so we can address the crisis of aging people in Massachusetts prisons, and pass the moratorium so we can build up healthy and thriving communities. Thank you so much. And also happy to answer any questions about the legislation.
Thank you both for being here. Are there questions, comments? I saw that Councillor Wilson would like to be added as a co-sponsor. And Councillor Davis. Councillor Burnley.
In addition to asking for the approval of this resolution, I'd like a file sent to the governor's office as well, please.
Very well. Seeing no further questions or comments, thank you again for being here. And give our best to the rabbi. Next item, please.
Item 4.37 is a resolution by Councillor Burnley in opposition to Cop City.
Councillor Burnley. And Councillor Kelly would like to sign on, and Scott.
Thank you. Before I give my comments, I would like to sponsor Barka Bandari to speak to this item as well.
Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Barka Bandari. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here to support the resolution in opposition to Cop City. I live in Ward 6 on Bank Street, right between Davis and Porter Square, and I'm so excited to be a new Somerville resident. As a resident of this place, I refuse to let our voices be silent in the midst of ecological destruction, rampant police violence, and the brutal obstruction of protest and dissent. More importantly, we must raise our collective conscience against these same evils here in our community by opposing our affiliation with Cop City in every way that we can. First off, I hope that everyone in this room can agree that climate change is a global phenomenon affecting millions of people every day. This inherently means that anywhere, the actions of one entity against the Earth have resounding impacts for several people around the world. A single tree being struck down in Atlanta is a threat to clean air for all of us here. Such is the interconnected nature of our survival in a world that is hurtling towards oblivion unless we do something today. And so, our solidarity must extend beyond national and state borders. The thousands of activists and organizers fighting for fighting against the deforestation of the Willani Forest by putting their bodies on the line are fighting for us too. The Willani Forest is a significant mechanism for carbon capture, and its deforestation increases everybody's vulnerability to the climate crisis. If these activists can continue to risk their lives for us, we can surely stand in staunch opposition to a project that is denying climate science and threatening to endanger all of our lives. Secondly, it is a fact that militarized police forces have formed the backbone of oppression against Black, brown, trans, and queer communities in our country for centuries now. Our communities have not been safe for ages because our governments insist on arming individuals with weapons and allowing them the right to inflict violence on anyone they want without any consequences. Cop City is meant to be a tactical training ground for the police. If we let this facility get built, police forces from around the country are invited to come to Atlanta and learn how to better attack, harass, terrorize, and even kill members of our neighborhood under the guise of public safety. In fact, according to a survey conducted by Cadence Bank, one of the investors in the project, 43% of the project's revenue will come from out-of-state police officers. If sent to Atlanta, the Somerville Police Department will learn to surveil, detain, high-speed chase, and shoot at this facility located right next to a children's prison where young kids will hear the sounds of gunshots coming from our officers' guns. In this way, Cop City is as much our project as it is Atlanta's. Today, we could either increase the violence of over-policing in Atlanta and here in our community by sending Somerville Police Department to Cop City, or we can instead commit to real public safety by curtailing their involvement in the project altogether. Thirdly, the fight against Cop City has been ongoing for 3 years now. Over this period of time, activists have been harassed, abused, and arrested for democratically exercising their right to protest. Over 60 people have domestic terrorism and racketeering charges against them. My partner, who's here today, I think he's in the back holding a sign, he's from the Boston area, and he recently went down to Atlanta and successfully delayed construction occurring on the Willani Forest right now before he was arrested alongside 4 others. I'm so glad that we had the motion about decarceration today. The moments that he spent in jail were unjust and unwarranted. No one should have to spend their time in a cage for anything, but especially not for demanding a safer world for all of us. Boston area and Somerville activists have gone down to Atlanta, not just to be in solidarity with the people of Atlanta, but because we recognize that the threat of police violence and the climate crisis is not dictated by borders. If members of our community are willing to put their time and safety on the line, city councilors here can take a stance. In January, a forest defender, fondly known as Tortuguita, was shot 57 times by the police in a meditative stance, and they were killed, all for an attempt to protect the Willani Forest. They were loved by their family and friends, and it is necessary for us to uphold their legacy by taking a stance against this deadly project. For me personally, the fight for a better planet means showing up for the trees, the rivers, plants, flowers, and people that have enriched my life in so many different ways. I spent the last 3 months forming human chains around bulldozers in Rajasthan, India, to protect a small but important forest from being destroyed. Every moment I spent there, I felt deeply close to the work that is being done in Atlanta. No border is big enough to stop our solidarity, and we must commit to keep Somerville in the pursuit of justice and freedom. Thank you, Councillor Burnley, for bringing this forward, and I strongly urge all of you to vote yes on the resolution to oppose Cop City. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burnley?
Thank you. I would just love to add a bit of context for this item as well. As Barka mentioned, 43% of the folks who will be sent to Cop City as trainees will be from outside of Georgia and outside of the Atlanta area. This implicates all of us. It is an effort that has been fought against in every conceivable way for years, from efforts to talk to the Atlanta City Council, from efforts to gather signatures, where over 100,000 signatures have been gathered locally, to to present to local officials, to acts of protest that have led to 61 RICO charges, state RICO charges, the same charges that our former President Donald Trump was charged with and is walking around free. We've seen members of our own community, not Georgia, not far away, our own community, impacted by. 42 of those came with additional state domestic terrorism laws. Right before I came to this meeting, I heard of a friend of mine in Cambridge who was charged with one of these domestic terror charges. And this is for trying to protect a forest, which removes roughly 19 million pounds of air pollutants from our air. A stand against Cop City is a stand against militarized policing. It is a stand for the environment. It is a stand against corporate funding for militarization of a facility that I would like to enumerate will have a tactical village so that police officers can simulate urban warfare, shooting range, a helicopter pad, and just far, far too much violence that will be indoctrinated into folks who will then potentially go back to their communities and use those tactics on peaceful protesters or other folks who do not need to be addressed with such violence. It is something that the American Civil Liberties Union, the Human Rights Watch, and the National Lawyers Guild, as well as other civil and human rights organizations, have stood against. And because it is impacting members of our community, because it is a moral stance, I believe that the city of Somerville, and this council in particular, should stand against the imposition of millions of dollars of investment into state-sanctioned violence and stand for listening to our residents and our community members when they speak up against massive fundings of sites of terror, quite frankly. And I would just note for the clerk, this resolution has a number of acts for files to be sent to certain members of the Atlanta City Council, DA, et cetera, that I'd love for this to be sent to. I can help with that if that is necessary. But I do just want to stress, this is not an abstract issue. This is something that is affecting members of our own community, and I believe that it is our duty to stand in solidarity with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Scott.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Councilor Burnley for bringing this, and thank you to the Speaker for bringing Tortuguita in the room. And this is, while I'm wholeheartedly in support of this resolution, happy to pass it tonight, I am also, it puts me in mind in terms of our obligation and interconnectedness to a larger system of when this council several terms ago made it very explicitly clear that we would no longer be participating in any version of the 1033 program where the federal government sends excess tanks and machine guns and other such things to municipalities. So my thought is that it might be useful to follow up with this resolution and a future ordinance to ensure that if this Cop City ever does get built, that the Somerville Police Department will be sending anybody there for training. Perhaps if municipalities all across the country would do the same, it would indicate there wasn't such a profitable market for their private Cop City. Thank you.
Thank you. That item is laid on the table for approval. Councilor McLaughlin.
Mr. President, I would like to be marked as a no on this. And I don't live in Atlanta. I don't know about Cop City. I see the headlines. I know the Atlanta City Council voted 11-4 in favor, and the city of Atlanta, the residents seem very divided on this issue. I know that if the city council from Atlanta sent me a letter telling me to oppose a public building in Somerville, I would laugh at them. And I would say that this has nothing to do with the city of Somerville. This has nothing to do with the city of Somerville. I apologize, I don't mean to offend people on this, but I get very frustrated lately. Most of the time, we have a lot of items that come before us of no consequence to the city of Somerville, national issues, international issues, interstate issues, and usually I just don't say anything because it's of no consequence. This vote is of no consequence, just to be clear, and I just know there's going to be a headline about this, about the divided vote, or with this big heated moment, the bold stance taken against the Atlanta police station and fire station, by the way. And I'm just kind of tired of explaining it to constituents that, I'm sorry, don't worry. This had nothing to do with the city of Somerville. I didn't say anything because it's sometimes just not worth speaking up. This item will be most likely the longest item we discuss tonight, and it's of zero consequence whatsoever. So I'm just going to say that now because it really is like, I get frustrated. We have our own public safety building, of course, that's controversial. If people in my neighborhood told me they don't want the trees cut down, I would listen to them. And I've publicly said, I don't want to see any trees cut down in front of the potential public safety building in my neighborhood. I've been knocking the neighborhood for the past several months. I have a number of constituent issues, relevant issues to the community. Never once heard someone ask me about Cop City in Atlanta. It just does not come up. This is not something that my constituents are extremely passionate about. And even if they were, I have no role in it whatsoever. You don't know that they're going to send police to Atlanta. There's an assumption based off nothing. So I just got to say it. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of every meeting having to just sit back and not say something on an issue that is of no consequence. And I know saying it now is going to anger people and there's going to be a big headline. I just hope that headline says Somerville City Council takes vote on issue of zero consequence for the city of Somerville.
Councilor Pineda-Newfield, Gomez-Moacad.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. I appreciate the passion around this issue. I too am sort of struggling with the connection to Somerville. I'm deeply overwhelmed with the number of constituent concerns and issues that have come to me recently. I wake up daily to emails about near misses from speeding cars, parents trying to get their kids to home daycares in neighborhoods with near misses. Yesterday I sat down with a bunch of seniors in one of our senior buildings who are afraid to cross the street for fear of being hit by a car. Pictures of needle caps in our parks, food insecurity issues in some of our low-income housing buildings, the housing crisis we talk about constantly. I try and really spend my time focusing on the quality of life issues that are facing our constituents every single day. I'm furiously Googling this issue to learn about it because it hasn't come up in my conversations with folks in our community of the things that they care about and that they're worried about and concerned about day to day. Like Councilor McLaughlin found that the City Council voted 11-4 in June to approve this, so I'm not entirely sure what this is for tonight. I'm sort of frankly confused and want to spend my time focusing on the city of Somerville. It's why I ran for City Council. If I wanted to focus on national issues, I would have run for a different office. So I too am a no vote on this.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad and then Kelly.
I'm also a no vote, and I want to say something. The speaker said nobody should spend time in a cage. My daughter, during the last presidential election, said, "Mom, what do you think about the election?" I said, "I want you to do your own research. I'm not going to ask you how to think." She did her research. And you know what called her attention? The number of children at the border in jail, caged up. They didn't choose that. That was years of colonialism and imperialism by people, some like us here. And they're caged. And they pick your fruit too. 50% of immigrants pick up the fruit you eat every day. You chose to be put in jail. You did not have to cross a border out of necessity. I applaud your activism. It is an important piece, but remember your privilege. And, you know, Senator Lydia Edwards recently commented about this, you know, that there are folks out there who have the privilege to go out there, and there are people in this community who are struggling to find a home, who are struggling to find food, who are suffering from drug addiction. And we should be paying, that's what we're here for. And at a municipality, the beauty is you can make a difference at the local level. We need more trees in East Somerville. We need to be planting trees. We need to find more green space for our community members who can't go to the Cape or travel to Europe for vacation, that they are here. Look at Foss Park. Foss Park could do a lot more work. We need more green spaces. We need them here in the city. I agree they're incredibly important, and I appreciate your passion, but this is leading you what I call the city council black hole. We go into these ideas, and I don't understand. It's like these things could be done in the public media. You can organize your own events outside of here. I encourage you, speak up, express yourself. I am all about that. I have 2 children who every day are challenging me. And I'm so glad they're growing up like that. But I have a series of orders here. We have a clock tower that's going to fall through us soon enough. Before we know it, the city hall is going to have to close off. That building is going to start falling into crumbles, and then we're going to pay money to take it down. We're going to pay money to Tufts to move over. We have parents going out of their way to take the, you know, juggling things. For those of us who are parents who have had to juggle, who don't have parents who live in this country, okay? We have to go juggle. When you have to do that juggle, it's hard and it's stressful, okay? So we have fire stations falling apart. I mean, honestly, it's a disgrace how we cannot manage our buildings, our infrastructure. We have people, we're trying to fix our sewer drains and stormwaters. I saw a neighbor on School Street yelling at the workers with such disrespect. You know, we don't even respect the, you know, workers here. It's like we're for labor, but we treat them like crap. Oh, please don't start work till 9 o'clock because you're going to disrupt me. It's blazing hot out there. You can suffocate, but I could care less about you. Okay? It's time we respect workers. We take care of our own. I appreciate all this activism. But I also want to point out, this black hole we go into, how many unions have we brought in here to talk? And how come our municipal union is still a mess? How come they're underpaid? How come we're not bringing them here to talk? Okay? We can't run a city, we don't have workers. And let me tell you, it's getting really hard to hire workers because everybody wants to go work for Google, Facebook, a nonprofit, Feel Good. Nobody wants to be out there leaning over, doing a weld.
I'd like to keep the discussion on the order, please.
Okay, so sorry, I just have to say this. You know, we need to stay focused. There's a lot of work to do, and we have to work together as a community to do this. I appreciate the activism, and there is a lot to do out there. Trust me. I have 2 children. One of them who I had to tell the other day, don't dress like that when you go to Pennsylvania, okay? Because I'm afraid for their lives. So there are complicated things that we have to resolve, that we have to come together as a country, and we have to work together. And that's the end.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to apologize to the speakers for coming up here, getting the courage to stand in front of a bunch of folks who hold institutional power right? This is a privilege, us sitting here, being elected, holding literal power. Our residents who come before us shaking, holding their phones, holding pieces of paper in their hands to come and use this public platform to speak about issues that impact their lives and that they care about, this actually is their city hall. This is their chambers. This is not our chamber. So the fact that we can disrespect residents and demean to them and condescend to them about the issues that are impacting their lives. Two of these comrades who just spoke about these issues, I've been organizing alongside them for literally a decade on the issue of public education in the state of Massachusetts. So connecting these issues of Cop City, when quite frankly we're about to have a Cop City here in Somerville, a $100 million facility that we are designing in the city of Somerville that is in competition with Cop City in Atlanta. The fact that I have colleagues who are willing to disrespect our residents who want to use this public platform that we have a fucking privilege to sit in these chairs and condescend to them, I feel like I'm gonna vomit at the fact that we were so disrespectful to those speakers. So I just want to apologize to the folks who came here tonight, took their night off where they're not being paid to come and tell us about issues they care about, and then had members of this body spend more time pitting issues against one another, acting as if this is a zero-sum game, when each and every one of you are allowed to bring items before this council that you feel like are important. Councilor McLaughlin, you and I are sponsoring an item tonight. There is not a book ban in a 20-mile radius of where we're sitting, but I felt like that was an important issue to support. Councilor Gomez-Macad, you have an issue tonight about police and the impacts of LGBTQIA folks and gender nonconforming folks and violence. The last most publicly documented moment of violence happening to the contained LGBTQIA plus community in the state of Massachusetts was Straight Pride, where Somerville cops were. So please do not tell me that this is not an issue that impacts us. I got pepper sprayed there. I had friends I had to pull out of jails. I had friends who had their faces broken. So when we talk about how policing impacts residents here in the city, impacts people like me who have power sitting on this council, how it impacts Black and brown folks in the state of Massachusetts, I'm sorry, but we have a right to listen to our residents and make space for them to bring us their issues and talk about the things that they care about. They can petition us to have public meetings, but quite frankly, in our charter review process, we removed the opportunity for them to speak. So I'm very grateful that Councilor Burnley presents opportunities for our residents, for our neighbors, to talk to us. And I'm sorry if that pisses you off because you assume things about people and their privilege. But quite frankly, I really appreciate when folks come and tell us their truths and tell us stories about their lives and quite frankly, speak truth to power, because we are the power in this situation and not in a good way tonight.
Mr. President, my name was mentioned, if I could respond.
Yes, Councilor McLaughlin, and just as a reminder to everyone, we go through the president. Councilor McLaughlin.
First of all, I do not want to disrespect anyone in the audience. I was trying not to. I'm passionate as well. I speak my truth as well. My truth is we have no role in a municipal building in the city of Atlanta. No tax dollars are going to it. There's no votes. There's nothing that the Somerville City Council can do. And in my truth, if I was a city councilor in Atlanta and I had a majority white city council send a message to me saying, we don't want you to build this building you voted overwhelmingly in favor for, I would throw it in the trash. And I'm not trying to disrespect the council, the people in the audience. I do question my colleagues who bring these things forward that have zero consequence to the city council and the city of Somerville. It's just a fact, it's a truth. Nothing you do will impact this. And in fact, I think it's disrespectful to the people of Atlanta as well, who are also very torn on this issue, who can make their own decisions for themselves, who don't need Somerville, Massachusetts to tell them what to think. So I just want to say that, and just just a couple other things. Yes, I do have a resolution in a very progressive city that probably will never ban a book, thankfully. I'm very grateful of that. There is state legislation at the State House to reinforce this, and it is something that constituents of mine have brought up, and I'm applying it specifically to the Somerville Libraries and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's what this is to me. No disrespect to people here. If any of you have an opinion about the Somerville Public Safety Building, I'll love to hear about it, even if you disagree, even if you think we should get rid of it. I'm not calling it Cop City. I'm calling it a municipal building that city employees work in, including firefighters and civilians. But we can call it Cop City, and I'll listen to you. But Atlanta is Atlanta. Somerville is Somerville. And again, it's my own fault, too, for speaking up. But I feel like I have to be silenced because I just got to sit back and not say anything and have to sit here and listen to pandering. It's pandering to me to say that the City Council in Somerville has any role in Atlanta, Georgia.
See, Councilor Davis hasn't spoken yet, and then Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you to the folks who came to speak. I certainly share the view that we are absolutely the forum to hear voices, and I have no issue with that. I'm always grateful to hear from folks who are willing to come up here and share their truths, as was said. I'm going to take a little different approach here. I'll go on the record saying I think this project in Atlanta is a terrible idea, and if I had any say in it, I would absolutely love to leverage that power to block it or make it not happen. I do agree that I'm confident that we will have no positive impact on keeping it from happening. I worry that we might have a negative impact just by creating more chaos and a framework for contrived narratives which we hear all too many from folks who, for whom the truth has no meaning or no importance. That said, we take symbolic actions all the time. We have had folks here from other countries. We have had folks here from other states. I think it's an okay use of time. I learn stuff on occasion. Unlike this one, where if there's an issue that someone has brought, there have definitely been times when I've learned and then gone out and made a donation or educated myself further. So I don't have an issue with using this forum for that type of thing. I do think that reading the specific words and requests in this item raises just some concerns for me from just from a legal standpoint, from not parliamentary standpoint, but really just a legal standpoint primarily. And I worry that, a roll call vote is not likely to help anyone. And so my thought, and this is just a suggestion, is that this might be referred to the Committee on Equity to consider whether there's an appropriate statement that we could make, that we could collectively get behind, that removes some of the unusual approach that I see in this item. There are certainly some suggestions at the end in the actual resolutions themselves that I haven't seen before that made me raise my eyebrow, and to see if there's something that we would be comfortable bringing forward that we feel would be appropriate. I don't suggest that as a way of sort of making the issue go away, kicking a can down the road. I legitimately would have concerns, although I support the spirit of this, I have concerns about some of the phrasing and wording here and whether it's a good precedent to set. So that's my piece on it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Burnley, then Councilor Gomez-Malcad.
Thank you. I do intend to ask for a motion for a roll call. I do want to just quickly and dispassionately address very quickly some of the comments that were said in response to this resolution. A number of my colleagues said that they were confused. I agree, they are confused. A number of them said they never heard of this or had no information about it. I agree, they sound like they didn't. As I mentioned, this has directly impacted and harmed members of our community. This is not an abstract, this is not an over there. We have people in this room who have been impacted by it. We have members of our community who have been incarcerated, who've been, held on bail and who have to go back to Atlanta to deal with these charges. I frankly do not care whether some of my colleagues feel like, talking about this makes it impossible to deal with other issues, because I find that to be rank whataboutism and completely erroneous and illogical, almost to the point that it is laughable. Except one last thing I agree with Councilor Kelly. This council has behaved incredibly disrespectfully to the people who stood up and spoke to us tonight, and I just want to be on record saying that it is this is atrocious behavior that I wish I could say I was entirely surprised. I cannot, but I wish that my colleagues would take this role seriously when people come before us and say that they have issues as residents of our city. It is our job as councilors to hear them, to listen to them, and if we can, to support them. Councilors may believe this is symbolic, then support it. Councilors may think that this won't have material impact. I disagree. The people who brought this before me disagreed. The people who are residents who asked me to help bring this forward disagreed. But if you don't think it's going to have an impact, support it, because it is morally the right thing to do. We have, the issues are laid out there. There are specific action items in this resolution relevant to Somerville and the Somerville Police Department. And I would like to see this council, which has no binding power in the form of a resolution over the police department, I would like to see us take a stance and say that we are on the side of our residents, we are on the sides of environmentalists who are fighting to stop the deforestation of 85 acres of land, and that we support the people who've stood up in this chamber tonight to speak to us calmly, powerfully, and optimistically, in hopes that their elected representatives would support them. So I would like to motion for a roll call on this, and let the chips fall where they may.
All right, a roll call is certainly in order. Councilor Gomez-Moacad, before that.
I want to make it clear, if anybody was disrespectful, it was me. I take full responsibility. I don't think Councilor McLaughlin or Councilor Pineda, you all know I'm very passionate. I always worry about the voices who are not here to speak for themselves for other reasons. So if I was disrespectful, I want to apologize. I don't mean, as I said, I think activism is extremely important. So I did not mean disrespect, and I want to take the whole fault for being disrespectful, okay? With that being said, I want to clarify something about 90 Washington. When 90 Washington first came through in the middle of our COVID crisis, I wrote to Councilor Niedergang like that and said, why in Lord's name, my schools are falling apart, are we building, and you're against policing, are we building a school? We're putting this energy right now when we need to be putting the energy in our schools. At that moment, the response to me is like, I don't understand what you're saying, okay? So I understood the consequences of focusing on different things, because what happens is time and money and resources are finite. That's why I worry when we put in discussions and we take away from other things. And we have gotten ourselves in a pickle with our infrastructure. I'm concerned. That's my experience, that's my background. I've been here for 20 years. I have my kids in schools. I know what a disruption it does. I have some lived experiences that give me a different perspective. And I think those perspectives are important, and I hope you do respect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion for the roll call? Councilor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. If So if we're entertaining the motion to approve the item, I'd like to request that the Solicitor's Office advise on whether specifically that a resolution that City Council will oppose accepting trainees from this facility, should it be built in the future, raises concerns in terms of our confirmation authority. I know there's been a lot of questions and frustrating conversations about that in the past. Those three words are the ones that raise the most concern for me. I do think that there's a lot in here that I think we could have accomplished a lot of this without the inflammatory language, to be honest, and we would have not had we would not have spent this much time on it. But those are the three words that give me the most challenge. So I'd like to make that request. If it requires laying this on the table, I would make that suggestion, but I'd leave it to the will of the President.
All right, clerk, is that a motion?
Language, if that is a motion, but I will certainly take that if you prefer, or if you just want it to be out there in the world, that's okay too.
Well, through you, Mr. President, if there's a representative from the Solicitor's Office here that could advise us on this, if not, I'll leave it to you how you want to proceed. If it's appropriate to make a motion to lay it on the table until we can hear from the Solicitor's Office, I guess I'd make that. There used to be a time when folks would come in that night and advise us on things, so it'd be great if that's possible tonight. But I don't know if that's the case.
I saw a head shake as if our solicitor is not present. It's my inclination, the sponsor of the resolution would like us to vote on it and move on. I'm happy to do that. If you'd like a motion to lay it on the table, we can do that and vote on that first. That is a privileged order. It would be my preference to vote on it and move on.
Through the President to the maker of the motion, would you consider just maybe taking those three words out? If with that, I think, my legal, I have other issues, but I still would, that would appease, or that would make the concerns go away from a legal standpoint if we want to move forward tonight. If not, I understand. It's a friendly request.
Councilor Burnley.
In response through the chair, I would just to make a comment and ask a clarifying question to my councilor colleague from Ward 6. It is my understanding that resolutions are non-binding. I do not see the legal concern of us saying that we support this as having any direct impact on our confirmation powers. I'm curious if you could either expound on that, or if you feel as though this resolution somehow binds us to doing this, because of course we all understand here that the mayor has the most power in this regard. So I'm curious more about that aspect.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the good councilor at large. Thank you for the question. I understand. No, my concern is more that having said this, putting this on record might raise a very, the first thing in a challenge should a future council make a decision to not confirm an appointee, and they happen to have gone to this facility, and there might have been other very valid reasons, but this might weaken our position in that case, and I'm trying to sort of think ahead. That's my concern.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, it is my inclination to keep that language in, because I believe that the folks who've been organizing around this and who've asked for this, who asked me to help bring forward this motion, see this as an integral and central aspect of this effort, because if Cop City does one day exist, this language is an attempt to have a stance as a municipality, in this case a non-binding one, but a stance that says that we are opposed to these efforts that have resulted in dozens of RICO charges, domestic terrorism charges against folks who've done nothing more than sleep in a forest or try to bail out their friends from excessive police violence. So it is my inclination to keep this in and to proceed with a motion to have a roll call.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that position. For the record, I just worry that language like this is unwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. On the item, we've had a roll call requested.
On the item,
Question.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. I'm looking up the, I want to update. So through you, Mr. President, through Council Burnley. So I'm looking up the resolution now. So what you're saying is that to vote yes or no, so you're essentially just compiling everything, including with this resolution that you, if you vote no, that you're for RICO charges? Is that what is essentially saying? Because you don't want to take this out. Can you clarify that, please? And for like what's happening in Atlanta, can you clarify what a yes or no would symbolize, I guess?
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I am not, there's an actual word for it, but I'm not a historian or a philosopher or expert on symbolism. I will leave that to the artists who do that work. The vote is on whether you support the resolution. That can mean whatever it means to you, and it will mean whatever it means to the folks who are in this chamber who came out of their way to spend this inordinate amount of time speaking about this when we could have just, talked about it and then let it pass. But I cannot speak to the symbolism that may be out there. I believe that this is a vote on the resolution and whether you support the resolution or not. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you. Through you to Councilor Burnley. But what you're saying is that you do not want to omit anything from the resolution, correct? So essentially that you either are in support of everything that this resolution without any amendments or modifications of that, or you're voting against it. I need to clarify this.
The vote is on the entire resolution, correct?
Right, so it's either yes or no, and that it has to be completely,
that is correct.
essentially listed on this, or is that?
That is correct.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, and so it's now 8:15, and I respect this conversation. I do. If I may, I'm really hoping to move along to some of the orders that I'm putting forward to discuss how the federal shutdown is going to impact food accessibility here in our city, including SNAP benefits, including WIC benefits.
We have a vote
our
before us.
resident. I understand. I didn't get a chance to speak, Mr. President. I respect the conversation. I want to know how this affects the city of Somerville right now. And I've listened to the conversation, so I'm just going to say this. I'd like to move on with the night. I appreciate the conversation again. I respect the conversation.
On the motion, please.
on the motion,
Thanks, Mr. President.
Councilor McLaughlin.
On the non-binding resolution, I vote no.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
No.
Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
No.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
No.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 6 councilors in favor and 5 opposed, that item is approved.
Excellent. Thank you very much to the speakers for being here tonight.
Mr. President, can we just make sure that goes to the Atlanta City Council? They're going to want to hear about this.
Next item, please.
And the next item that the council will take out of order is item 4.33, a resolution by councilors McLaughlin and Kelly in recognition of the trend to curtail access to books and other resources.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize to the people that I invited up here to speak on this item that does pertain to the city of Somerville specifically and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It is something that I'm very passionate about, which is freedom of speech, which is what everyone saw here tonight. So I hope people feel free to express themselves themselves in any way they feel. This is about banning books, and specifically what's happening now with GLBTQ books in America. The First Amendment is my favorite amendment. It's the number one for a reason, and it's there to protect people's liberties and protect information and knowledge that people gain, and we're lucky to have this amendment. It is often challenged throughout our history, and I would tell you people should look up the books that have been banned in America that look frivolous now, the reasons why they were banned decades ago. Books like The Catcher in the Rye, which were now taught in high school and elementary school. The books that were banned yesterday are now common reading for people today. And what we're seeing in other parts of the country, fortunately not Somerville and not so much Massachusetts, is the effort to ban knowledge from people and ban people's freedom of expression. So I have invited a couple Ward 1 residents, Laura Saunders, who serves on the Library Board of Trustees, and Christina Champa, who just reopened her All She Wrote Books, the only queer-owned bookstore in Massachusetts, to speak, and I'd like to sponsor them to speak.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Councillor Wilson would like to sign on.
No, you can go first. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Laura Saunders. I'm a professor at Simmons University, lifelong resident of Somerville, and a former Board of Trustees member of the library. I am no longer on the board, so I'm not speaking for them tonight. But I am here to speak in favor of this anti-book banning resolution. As Matt already alluded to, and as I think we know across the country, there's been an exponential rise in challenges to books and other materials in libraries and schools. According to PEN America, it's about 1,900 challenges this year alone to about 900 different book titles. And as Matt already mentioned, these are disproportionately focused on LGBTQIA+ books and books that have to do with race and race relations. And this is a really serious issue because it means that not only are people not necessarily getting access to books and information that they will see themselves in, but it's also keeping books and information away from mostly children and youth who may not have access to those books and that information in other ways. I also want to be clear that this isn't necessarily a red state, blue state, or a rural, urban kind of thing. It's happening all across the country. It's happening in Massachusetts. It happened while I was on the Board of Trustees here in Somerville. So while it's not as likely to be an issue in Somerville, where it much more progressive city than some places, we're not immune to these issues either. Currently, there are over 30 states that have passed or are passing or looking to pass legislation that would facilitate book banning in those states, and in some cases would actually criminalize the librarians and teachers who collect and organize and make access to those books. 2 states have passed anti-book banning legislation. That's California and Illinois, and as Matt mentioned, Massachusetts State Senate does have something before it, but I'd love Somerville to take this step to support intellectual freedom for its residents, to support the libraries and the public schools that provide that access, and to recognize the role that librarians and teachers play, professionally trained librarians and teachers play in providing that kind of access. So I just want to thank you all. I'm going to keep my remarks short, but thank you all for listening, and thank you to Matt for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina Champa. I'm the owner and founder of All She Wrote Books. We're not the only queer feminist bookstore in Massachusetts, but we are in Somerville, and mostly in the greater Boston area. So just wanted to clarify that for the record. So I come at this juncture from a person of experience in the sense of working with the actual libraries here in the city. So we are an actual vendor with the city, both with the schools as well as the library, and we help them curate their LGBTQ sections, all of them. Actually, this week alone, we're going to start distributing the books that were curated for all 10 schools over the summer, which I'm super excited about, in time for LGBTQ History Month. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because, yes, while we do live in Massachusetts, we are very fortunate. We are also very fortunate that something is on the Senate floor to help protect us from bans. But the hate and the resistance to having different perspectives, whether it's through books or just through conversation or people living, is very serious. And it still occurs here, including in Somerville. As a queer-owned business, we have a Black Lives Matter sign that's currently in our window at Assembly Row, and that gets trashed at least once a week with coffee, soda, things like that. We've had death threats before for Drag Story Hour. These are just examples of the fact that there is hate that exists in the city as well as in our surrounding neighborhoods. So where I'm going with that is the fact that what my thing is that we need to protect our librarians, to Laura's point of protecting our librarians, protecting our teachers from stalking the books that really give different perspectives and different aspects of life that we otherwise wouldn't have. I know, as a person that grew up in suburbia here in Massachusetts, pretty much a white bubble, I will totally admit that for the record, the only way that I was able to understand other perspectives and other people in the world was because I was so in love with my library. And my library was strong enough to stock all the different types of books. And that's how I found out I was queer as well. So for me, as a queer person, and as well as a person who owns a bookstore that is truly a beacon for the LGBTQ community as well as the BIPOC community and so many other communities who have been historically marginalized, something like this is extremely important to have, and for us to take a stand on it, while yes, knowing we are in the state that we are in, but taking a stance on it, just like Illinois and California, can really mean a lot. And so I'm coming at it from that perspective as a curator, but also someone that supports a lot of the city's functions in order to make sure that those books are present. So thank you very much for your time this evening, and I'll keep it at that.
Thank you. Thank you both very much for being here. I saw Councilors Davis, Strezzo, Burnley, Pineda. The entire council would like to sign on. Councilor Kelly is the co-sponsor, and then I see a number of other hands. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank these folks for bringing this item before us. And, I work with librarians and teachers every single day in my day job and have seen in school systems and libraries across Massachusetts how homophobic, transphobic, racist, fascists have come into our spaces to try to police the way our educators teach, the way our librarians treat their patrons, the books that we see not just in our schools but on our shelves in our libraries, and the ways that we can attack this issue in an institutionalized way are multifaceted. In the teachers union world, we talk about intellectual freedom in our contracts, right? We try to win those protections so that when trans educators are teaching in schools, they're not going to be singled out and attacked by homophobes and transphobes and racists in their community. That's literally happened less than 20 miles from where we are right now. There are book bans that school committees in Massachusetts have talked about that would impact all types of folks, educators, students, young people, families. And at the end of the day, just, if I had been reading some of the books that are on the shelves now when I was a young queer person, I would have felt so much more safety and security and just being seen. What these book bans, what the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, what all of these things are setting us up to do is erase queer people. The state has tried to erase queer people as long as the state has existed. There is a generation of queer people who we will not have because of the way the state responded to the AIDS crisis. So this is just another way to kill off queer joy, and it's not going to happen while I'm alive. So thank you so much for bringing this item up, for leading the work in Somerville, for being in the struggle, and putting out all those damn rad books.
Hear, hear. Can everyone who wants to speak put your hand up again? Thank you. Councilors Wilson, then Burnley.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleague from Ward 1 and my colleague at large for bringing this. I just want to acknowledge that by staying true to our principles here, it means that there will be some books and some materials with viewpoints that we're going to disagree with, and I'm okay with that. I think we can handle that. The First Amendment means that much. The world is going to go on. I do want to say we want to make sure we're teaching our kids in public schools how to consume these things critically with good media literacy in the curriculum to make sure that they're able to discern the good from the bad. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. I would also like to thank my colleagues for bringing this item forward. Councilor McLaughlin, thank you very much. Councilor Kelly, thank you very much. And mostly thank you to the speakers who are bringing this forward and who are protecting our youth by giving them self-knowledge. As my colleagues know, I was not born in Massachusetts, I was born in California, and I went through the California education system. And at the time that I did, it was illegal to teach queer history in California. I never knew who Harvey Milk was, despite the fact that he was in the same state as I was. I never got to have a critical lens on history because it was illegal for my teachers to not only to teach it, but to also, at the time, to even say that they were queer or gay. And so I think we've progressed greatly in this country, and Massachusetts has been a pivotal part of that legacy. I'm grateful that our community is not one where I have to worry every day that books are going to be pulled off the shelves because they teach an accurate history of mass enslavement and they do not try to whitewash it, or where we are left in the dark, or our children are left in the dark about what it means to be attracted to certain people or to have certain feelings. But I do want to just recognize that librarians and school committees, unfortunately, have been on the front lines of a culture war by the far right that has been incredibly devastating. And I'm very grateful for their service to our communities and in particular our young people. So thank you.
Thank you. I am extremely proud and gratified to live in and serve in a city where this is how we all feel, and it is really bone-chilling to see what is happening around the country. And this is a good reminder of kind of what those stakes are. And I'm very thankful that you're both here tonight, and to my colleagues for bringing this forward. And I also want to take this opportunity to just ask, it's my understanding that All She Wrote Books is moving to East Broadway. Can you just tell us your new address?
Yes. Hi, again, for the record. Yes, so we have been displaced from our home in Assembly Row. So we have to be out of there by October 15th. Our new home will be at 75 Washington Street, which, funny enough, is right near 90 Washington, but, that's okay. Sorry, I'm trying to bring humor into the situation. I know these are supposed to be serious conversations. But yeah, we're gonna be moving there. I'm very excited about it, though, because, right now there really isn't much going on Washington, and I feel like this is an opportunity to really kind of vitalize the area. But at the same time, for us, it's being even closer to an actual community. And that, to me, is more important. So, yes. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be open the last week of October. So please definitely come and visit us. We would appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on the new location. Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
I just want to thank the speakers for all you're doing for our youth right now. There's nothing more important that I always tell my kids is to find your true self, to find who you truly are, and it's so important that they find any form of expression that they feel comfortable with. So thank you.
That item is laid on the table for approval.
And the next item is item 7.3, a request of the mayor requesting authorization to borrow $973,985 in a bond and to appropriate the same amount for the cost of acquiring a custom fire pumper.
So this is the first of two finance items that we're seeking immediate votes on. Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. The administration had flagged this one as time sensitive, and we're hoping we don't have to have a sort of special finance committee meeting on the 10th. So in light of that, I wanted to take that up for immediate consideration tonight.
Excellent. And I see Chief Breen is here. If there are questions, are there questions? I learned as a city councilor that the vehicle is called a pumper. I thought it was called a truck. That's what I learned in preschool, but, you know, whatever. On the item.
On the item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Next item, please.
And the next item is going to be item 10.13, a mayor's request, requesting the time-only extension of 2 months to November 30th, 2023 for the Inspectional Services Residential Property Rodent Control Program contract.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Same deal. We're looking to fast track this just because, given the time-sensitive nature of it, we don't want to be responsible for a gap in rodent mitigation services in the city.
Councilor Kelly.
Thanks so much, Mr. President. Do we have Director Antanavica on? I just have one question.
We do. Just a moment.
Yes, I'm here.
Director, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, Councilor Kelly.
Thanks so much, through the President, to you, Director Antanavica. Thanks for being with us tonight. Just a clarifying question. This is for smart boxes. Is this moving any of the smart boxes or just keeping the smart boxes where they are, or is this something totally different?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, this is not for the smart boxes. This is for the residential rodent control program. We're looking to have a time-only extension. We have additional unexpended funds in the contract, and right now we're just looking to cover the gap until we get the new contract up and running.
And who's our contract with? Remind me.
Currently, it is with B&B Pest Control.
Okay, so smart boxes are with Modern Pest and B&B does the residential.
Yeah, that is correct, yes.
Okay. Mr. President, I don't have any more questions. I'm, of course, going to approve this. I haven't been touched by a quarterly rat yet, so I normally try to get 4 in a year. If we can keep this program going, I will not be touched in the autumn quarter.
I had not caught that the company is called Modern Pest. Roll call, please.
We don't need one if you're so inclined.
Great. We'll lay it on the table for approval. Thank you for being here, Director.
Thank you.
So the next item that the council will take out of order is item 5.1, a grant of location from Eversource for an amendment to license BL 22-36, a grant of location for 205 Beacon Street.
Thank you. So this is an item that Councilor Scott had raised some questions with. We have Jackie Duffy here in person in case those questions remain. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that this was laid on the table so that I could do some research. When it came in, it was a supplemental item at our last meeting, and there was some last-minute communication. I have had some time to consult with city departments and also with the solicitor. The central question is whether or not our grant of location authority, as extended under Mass General Law, I believe that's particularly Chapter 166, Section 22, would extend to being able to use discretion in advance of policy aims. And honestly, the question is still somewhat open. However, it is the concern from a combination of Telebeam Telecoms Corp. Versus City of New York, which indicates that there may be some perception that having declined this particular grant of location and accepting others might be viewed as discriminatory, that really only the courts would settle that out. Cablevision versus Boston indicates that it wouldn't be necessarily. So, but given that guidance, the crux of it is that while it has been the practice of the city to encourage folks folks to put all this transmission equipment underground. In this particular case, there's nothing on the books that says that that is a requirement by the city, and so using the grant of location, declining this grant of location to compel either another workaround or actually putting the transformer underground as intended might potentially run afoul. So my inclination on this is, although I am very upset about having this transformer above ground, this is one of those 100-year mistakes. 100 years from now, there's going to be a transformer sitting in that backyard that nobody's going to want to be around. But this is how we find weaknesses in our codes and in our procedures. We unfortunately find them in the breach. So for this one, I would personally recommend approval this evening. I have an item later on that'll help address this going forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. With that item is approved.
And the next item to be taken out of order is item 8.1, an officer's communication from the city clerk requesting approval to release 13 sets of executive session minutes as described within.
All right, so colleagues, these are minutes from executive sessions ranging over a number of years. If anyone wishes to discuss the contents of those, we would go into executive session, and we have our solicitor here. If no one needs to do that, we can take a vote in open session to release the minutes. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, release the tapes.
Release the tapes, okay. And just for the record, our city's solicitor has okayed these, right? So if there was a question someone might have about attorney-client privilege, anything, our attorneys have reviewed these and okayed this. Councilor Kelly.
This is maybe a naive question, but is this a routine approval? I'm seeing a head nod from the clerk. Could you just speak more to why this is routine?
That would be helpful, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. President. So the rules of the City Council do state that periodically the city solicitor and city clerk should review the executive session minutes and submit them to the City Council for approval to release them under the guidance of the city solicitor. And that guidance for all of these, as you'll see in the communication that's in Legistar, has been to release them in full. There's an option that the recommendation could be to release them in a redacted form, and certainly the option that some of them should not be released, which would at this point not yet come before the council.
Through the president, just a follow-up text, is there any particular reason why these were the ones selected?
Through the president, this represents most of the newer ones that are not still pending, and a handful of older ones that were never submitted to previous councils, as far as I could tell in my diligence going through the records of the previous city clerk and trying to figure out where we're at today.
Got it. We've just had so many fun executive sessions.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to clarify, did you say that the city solicitor is here for any questions?
I believe they are available digitally, but I see Director Singh is approaching.
Through the chair, apologies if there was any miscommunication. Solicitor Amara is unable to attend tonight's meeting. I'm happy to take any questions back or have an executive session at the next meeting.
And just for the record, colleagues, this is not a time-sensitive decision. Councilor Davis.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're all set? Okay. Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, I'll just say transparency is good. I hope we see a lot more of these. Thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, I move to recommend approval.
On that motion, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo. Yes. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mulcad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Padana-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is approved.
Excellent. Colleagues, we're at 8:40. Let's take a 10-minute recess before we start the agenda. We'll reconvene at 8:48. All right, colleagues, we'll call this meeting back to order. Can we take a roll call to establish quorum, please?
This is roll call. Counselor McLaughlin. Here. Counselor Davis.
Here.
Counselor Scott. Counselor Strezzo.
Here.
Counselor Klingon.
Present.
Counselor Wilson.
Present.
Counselor Burnley.
Present.
Counselor Gomez-Milcad.
Present.
Counselor Kelly.
Here.
Counselor Pineda Neufeld.
Present.
Counselor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With all counselors present, we have a quorum.
Excellent. I believe we're back at the beginning of the agenda.
Indeed, that will return us to the regular order of business and item 4.1, a resolution by Councilors Wilson and Pineda Neufeld that the City of Somerville observe World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims.
Councilor Burnley, Kelly, everyone would like to sign on to this. Councilor Wilson?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. President. Traffic deaths tend to get headlines, and rightfully so, but we don't tend to hear about non-fatal incidents. In this month alone, I've heard about 2 separate cases where Somerville residents were struck by vehicles as pedestrians while crossing the street. So observing the World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims is a solemn but important thing that we can do to call attention to this really dire problem. I like to say that walking around one city should not be a high-risk activity, but all too often it is here in Somerville. So let's all please commit to doing better out there.
Councilor Pineda Neufeld, did you want to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just that there is a potential event in the works. We don't have any actual details, but once we do, we'll share that with the council and with the public.
Excellent. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4.2 is an order by Councilors Scott and Ewan-Campen that the Director of Mobility implement a quick build safety treatment for the intersection of Prospect and Webster Streets.
Councilor Wilson would like to sign on. Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for bringing this item with me. This is I'd like to say it's a no-brainer, but it's one of those things that has been a chronic problem at the top of that street, a chronic problem that is exacerbated every time there's a closure in Union Square, which has been frequently over the last 5 years, and traffic has to be detoured around the top of that. But honestly, every day, it is an expanse of concrete. It is poor signal timing. There is no structural impediment to actually tell people where to go up there. I honestly think we'd be better with one of those little, aluminum trash cans or galvanized trash cans in the center with a traffic person pointing at which car gets to go next. I think we'd be better off. So I'm not going to detail exactly which intervention is going to be appropriate or best there. I think anything would improve an intersection that is just manifestly dangerous. And I will go further to say that I have heard that, well, we'll get to that when the Union Square Plaza is redesigned, or we'll get to that when US 2 builds their buildings at that intersection, and I don't think that's acceptable. I think this is a massive problem. I think it is a massive problem that could be addressed in short order. I am inspired by the work on Pearl Street to introduce traffic calming directly into the middle of the street, and it's my hope that this will be taken seriously and hopefully taken forward by our Traffic and Parking Committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I just want to speak on this as well before Councilor Wilson. So as Councilor Scott said, this is an intersection, we call it Prospect and Webster, but actually it's 5 streets coming together, and there's like hundreds of feet of just uninterrupted, unpainted pavement. And it is a nightmare for traffic, but it's really, really scary for pedestrians. And it is included in the long-term planning for a real rebuild under the Union Square Plaza, which I hear we're going to be hearing about more soon. And of course, there is private development happening at that corner that will make major improvements to part of the sidewalk. But specifically, what I think we need to do is not wait for the concrete and asphalt fixes. We need to get in there with quick build, with paint, with flex posts, with whatever the recommendation is, because the the current situation is just completely kind of unacceptable. It's one of the intersections I hear about most. I also travel through it multiple times a day in multiple modes of transit, and it is just completely terrifying and a nightmare. So I think this is a perfect example of where we need to go in there with flex posts and paint and start to fix the problem before we have a long-term solution. Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I want to thank you and Councilor Scott for putting this order in. I was prepared to say a lot more about this. I'll just say this intersection is trash, and we should do something about it.
That item is referred to traffic and parking.
Item 4.3 is a resolution by Councilor Strezzo that the administration brief the City Council on how a 2023 federal government funding shutdown could impact Somerville.
Councilor Strezzo.
So we are days away from a federal funding shutdown, and this will affect Somerville in some way. I'd like to really have a conversation about this and also talk about, so I've been researching what and how it could, at least on my end, and I'd like the administration to weigh in. But before I ask the administration to speak on it, I want to point out that Social Security, so if the shutdown does happen, Social Security will still happen, veteran program, veteran services will still happen, programming will not. What is very concerning is that SNAP benefits will be nearly 7 million women and children could lose critical access to food, at least across the nation. But at a city, at least a regional conversation, as Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley had said earlier today, that 125K families in the Massachusetts 7 will be affected, and that it will absolutely put food accessibility at a concern. With SNAP cards, people may not know if their benefits will run out until they're checking it out at the counter. And if you could really take an impact of how demoralizing not only that will be, but also just how terrifying that will be. WIC has best case scenario till October before they start to feel the impacts. 7,000 federal workers in our region that will be furloughed, and also when it comes to, and that's full-time workers may see the pay, but if they're part-time, they may not be eligible for that, for back pay. This is going to have some impacts. From what I'd really like to hear from the administration really quick. I know that we had been talking in addition to leading up to tonight's meeting, but if you can just weigh in, I'd like to do that, Mr. President. I'd like to have the administration speak on this. Thanks.
Director Singh.
Through the chair, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Strezzo, for highlighting this important issue. The relevant city departments are gathering information that they would need to understand how this would impact the city and residents. Members of our community, relevant staff are in touch with our federal delegation. I know that we're trying to get information to see if there would be potential impact on funding that the city receives through federal grants, getting information on some of the federal programs that could impact our residents. I do not have concrete updates or data to share at this point, but look forward to having this discussion in committee or coming back to the City Council with more updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is what I am requesting, that this be sent to housing.
Certainly. Councilor Burnley.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to also sign on and thank my colleague for bringing forward this item. You know, we had a shutdown 10 years ago that in 2013 that furloughed federal workers, including my father, when I was just starting college. It almost ended with me not being able to afford to go back to college. So I know that there are people across this country, and including in our city, that are going to be directly impacted by this. I'd just like to also raise up that Head Start is a program that will be impacted as well, and we're potentially going to see disruptions to childcare in our city because of the federal funds that help raise it up. This is something that we need to pay a lot of attention to make sure that we're keeping our families together and safe and well treated. So thank you.
Thank you. That item is referred to Housing and Community Development.
Item 4.4 is a communication by Councilor Strezzo conveying a report of the Children's Cabinet meeting.
Councilor Strezzo.
So the Children's Cabinet met September 12th, and for anyone who needs to be updated on what the Children's Cabinet is, it is a cross-department committee that meets once a month and includes the superintendent of schools and many departments, any department that essentially touches the life of a child from birth to 18. And we have been working on out-of-school time issues, and some of the things that were brought up, the meetings are attached to the agenda, but some of the things we discussed in the meeting that I really wanted our colleagues for you to hear, so you can relay to your constituents as well, is out-of-school time is absolutely continued to be discussed and addressed as much as possible. So we have a out-of-school time coordinator position that is coming up. There's a lot of targeted programming, but there's a need for non-targeted programming to cover the large wait list that currently exists, so it's trying to be addressed as quickly as possible. The expansion of seats has increased dramatically since pre-pandemic levels, and we also have now a youth services division and a director position. They are hired, so they're getting fast to work to address things. There's been discussions of workforce development, and cohesive programming is the biggest goal. And some of the things that school committee member Barish and I also brought up as well is that Cashier and Parts and Crafts are no longer providing transportation after moving locations, and El Sistema has additional spots, but some things I hear a lot from constituents is that they have after-school slots at one school, but they can't get there because they go to another school. And so transportation is a real issue, and it is a huge burden on families and caregivers. And out-of-school time still struggles with to address needs sometimes with IEPs or 504s. And another thing that came up, that out-of-school time, if families owe a balance on out-of-school time charges, the out-of-school time providers can send home letters and even charge families interest, and can pull kids from the program until the balance is paid. And in my mind, that's essentially poverty shaming. So we have to do better to fix these gaps. Another some things that we talked about as well is restructuring, and we're creating more teen job opportunities from SOIA, which is exciting, and also working on the location with the teen center now that a lot of the Edgerly now has a lot of Winter Hill kids that are still trying to figure out where we're moving around things in the teen center. So yeah, and just to bring back how the impact of out-of-school time is on students, say for instance, 2 students at West Somerville have had to withdraw from kindergarten because they did not have enough slots for after school. That's how consistent the problem is. And so I'd love, colleagues, if you have any issues you're hearing from your constituents about this, I'm happy to bring this up to the cabinet as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilor Strezzo. That item is approved, placed on file.
And item 4.5 is an order by Councilors Gomez Molcad and Pineda Newfeld that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management provide a report on the status of the Fire Department Master Planning Study, including projected timelines for the feasibility study, design, bidding and construction, and prioritization strategies.
Councilor Strezzo would like to sign on. Councilor Gomez Molcad and Wilson.
So, as you very know, in the capital improvement plan, we have a fire station rehabilitation program. We recently had some failures on Teal Square, and just like any master plan, I think we need to be on top of where these are based on the projections here. We won't see anything till it's between FY 25 and 35, but I want to make sure that there are studies ongoing right now, and we're addressing issues with these fire stations before it becomes this kind of like, we hit these situations here in the city where it's like having a bucket with a million holes. We stop one here and then the other one in there. So I think it's an important piece, you know, after seeing that. I do want to make a correction. It should just say Department Planning Study, because the intent is to determine what code improvements need to happen, and then they will go into design. So rather than give the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management a heart attack for my specificity, if I can delete including to through strategies and just leave it as master plan study. And if we can refer this to committee, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of what would be the best committee. Did you have an idea?
Public Works, Infrastructure and Public Works would be the right, I think.
Councilor Davis would like to sign on, and this is referred to Public Works.
Item 4.6 is an order by Councilors Gomez Molcad and Pineda Newfeld that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management provide an update on the repairs of the Teal Square Fire Station, including a timeline for such repairs.
Councilor Strezzo would like to sign on. Councilor Gomez Molcad.
Yeah, so again, this might be a little premature. I know drawings went out for bid on Friday. Again, I want to make sure we're on top of this and following up and seeing what the timeline is. So that's why I have this here. And it might be by the time we get to committee, they're not ready to respond because they haven't gotten the bids. But I think, again, I want to make sure we're making the city accountable for following up on these things.
And would you like that referred to the Committee on Public Works as well?
Yeah.
All right, that item is also referred to Public Works.
Item 4.7 is an order by Councilor Gomez Molcad that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management report on recent damages to the City Hall clock tower and share any concerns regarding potential damage to the building structure.
Councilor Gomez Molcad.
Can you read the next one and I'll speak to those together, please?
Item 4.8 is an order by Councilor Gomez Molcad that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management report on ongoing deficiencies of City Hall and the City Hall Annex that could impair future use of these buildings.
So recently, like looking outside, I became aware that our clock tower, if you notice, the clock tower has kind of fallen in. And there was concern with the rains of water infiltration coming through here. I'm going to assume our structure is wood in here, which is concerning. We can have rotting. If you start looking at the roof, you start seeing other deficiencies there. And I also want to understand, we keep on having deficiencies throughout City Hall. I know the annex, I hear from staff. And my concern is and the reason I have this is, you know, sometimes we focus on the one item, but we forget to look at the big picture. And you'll see I have another order here regarding this, and it is to make sure that we're at a point we have to address all of these, because what's going to happen is Infrastructure and Asset Management is going to spend half their time sort of, you know, solving crises, and we're not going to get into the actual planning of things. The bundle is getting really big. And this is going to be tied. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 1895 building a little bit, so I'm going to leave it at that. But again, if this can be also referred to committee.
Councilor Pineda Newfeld wanted to sign on to these? Yeah, I would as well. I followed up with I actually learned about the clock tower falling apart from my toddler, who passes by it on his way to work, and he said, on his way to school, and he said, the clock tower fell over. And I said, excuse me? And then I followed up with the administration. Yeah, he was right. My understanding, is that it is currently stabilized and under control and will be repaired as soon as possible. But I absolutely think that this is worth following up on. These items are referred to Public Works and Public Utilities.
And item 4.9 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the Chief of Police report on the training, education, and policies established for officers to address violence against LGBTQ and gender nonconforming individuals.
Councilor Gomez-Milcad.
So on Sunday, when we had Fluff Fest, I was with a group of kids. Some were dressed in gender nonconforming ways. As a parent, I know we live in a liberal city, but I think there's a lot of, maybe because I come from Puerto Rico, where there has been an extreme violence against the trans community there. I'm very nervous. And one of the kids said to me, "Don't worry, I'll call the police." And I'm like, well, I don't know what they're, I want to make sure they have training and understanding. I don't want to fall into victim blaming. How do we address the issues? We have a lot of youth out there who I'm very grateful can express themselves and be themselves, which is something, the stories when I was younger and how much repression is unbelievable, and the damage that so many kids had as a consequence of that. So I want our kids to express themselves, and it just, when a child mentioned this and meant to me, I asked a question. I'm no expert in the subject. If my colleagues want to comment on this, that was my knee-jerk reaction, that it's something we need to talk about and discuss. And then we can refer this to Equity Committee.
This item, Councilor Strezza would like to sign on. This item is referred to the Committee on Equity.
Item 4.10 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the Director of Mobility, the Director of Engineering, and the Commissioner of Public Works consider integrating the installation of bike racks in sidewalks when conducting repairs to such sidewalks, including infill of trees that have been removed.
Councilor Gomez-Milcad.
So recently in front of my house, or my neighbor, right, they removed a tree, they paved the sidewalk, they removed a sign, so what there used to be a post before where we could lock our bikes, someone was visiting, it went away. We shouldn't lock our bikes to posts, but it does happen. I know someone the other day mentioned someone locked their bike to a brand new tree. So as we're repairing these, thank you. As we're repairing these sidewalks, I think it's a no-brainer to put a bike rack. I know when I was running for office, I would bike everywhere, and I was always like, where do I lock my bike? It's a very simple thing. We have guest passes for people who come and visit us in cars. We should have a little place for people who are visiting us to lock their bikes. I think this is plain and simple. I don't think it needs to go into committee. Just a request.
Councilor Wilson would like to sign on, and?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleague from Ward 5 for putting this forward. This is something I actually hear about a decent amount from constituents, especially as we get more e-bikes, more cargo bikes. Those are really heavy to carry up your front stairs. It's much more convenient to be able to leave those on the sidewalk and lock those. So I think the more we can do in terms of putting bike racks, the simple inverted upside down U racks, it's just better for the community.
Councilor Davis would like to sign on as well. Thank you, Councilor. Next item.
Item 4.11 is a resolution by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the administration collaborate with the school department on determining the best and future use of the 1895 building.
Councilor Gomez-Milcad.
Can you read the next one, please?
Item 4.12 is a resolution by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the administration report on capacity to allow parallel staffing and funding for the development of the 1895 building, school building master plan, and fire department master plan building study.
So, I think I when you're in construction, architecture, you see the world in a different way. I just walked in the high school the other day, and I see how things wear and tear, what's working, what's not working. And I am getting concerned with the number of, we're very focused, very importantly so, on our school building. That does not mean we don't focus on the other buildings. I think if we had the staff capacity, we should be able to do it. If not, we're going to, again, end up in this conundrum where we're constantly shifting around. And I want to also make a point. We have bike network plan, we have a curb study plan, we had a field master plan, and we added a staff of 200 at the cost of $250,000 to take care of our fields. We don't have much for our buildings. We did a municipal building study. Now we're trying to do the school building. We can't be gun shy, and we have to, maybe that's not the right thing to say, but we have to really start mobilizing and looking at all these buildings. As I said, you don't want to end up paying for demoing a building that you were trying to save. You don't want to pay for relocating city staff because they couldn't be here anymore. So I think it's extremely important. I consider it an important legacy as I step from office, that we really don't forget about these structures. I know it's not sexy. It's not something we like to do, but I'm not saying we don't like to do, but it's hard to follow up, and it's in my wheelhouse. So I would like to refer these to committee because I will want to have a serious conversation about this. I also understand that part of the lock in 1895 is that the school department wants some reassurance, that the master plan for the schools is happening, but they have some interest in there. For example, we just moved all of the school department into the TAB building at the cost of $1 million. If we had this building, they could have moved here. So I think, again, these are things that I find are important to do. So we could refer this to committee as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd like to sign on to these. I also, and I know the council is extremely interested in the future of the 1895 building, and certainly not at the expense of any of the other projects we have. But the conditions that city workers are in the annex and other buildings, it's just completely unacceptable. And those are public employees, and members of the public are expected to have meetings there. And it is very, very clear that ultimately we are going in that direction, and I share the impatience for us to get there. So these are referred to the Committee on Public Works and Public Utilities.
Item 4.13 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Commissioner of Public Works address the sewage smell around 85 Washington Street.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Mr. President, I would like to waive the readings of items 4.13 to 4.33, all constituent issues that I talked face-to-face with the people of Ward 1 about. These are the things they're concerned about. I will follow up on my own to make sure that they are addressed.
Very well. Those items are approved.
Item 4.34 is an ordinance by Councilor Burnley amending Section 12-116 of the Code of Ordinances to create a Safe Streets Ordinance to expedite protected bike lanes.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, and through the chair, what an auspicious day for this item to be brought up. Given my colleagues' support for a day of remembrance for road traffic victims, the approval of a citywide bicycle network plan that I'm excited for this council to take up, and other comments that were made regarding the importance on focusing on improving residents' road safety. This has been long in the making. Over a year ago, on September 17th, 2022, the Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets held a rally of more than 100 people with a singular demand, that the mayor and the city council pass a Safe Streets Ordinance. Although I've been known to be quite impatient when it comes to passing ordinances and delivering results for our constituents, I have tried to be very patient with this one because I understand that it is going to take a very coordinated and thoughtful approach from many different departments as we try to not only implement our bicycle network plan, but to ensure that the protected bike lanes are expedited and put into place as quickly as possible to ensure that our residents are safe. I want to be very clear that this ordinance is still a work in progress. There is going to be ample time for our committees to talk about how we can ensure that we take a collaborative approach in terms of making sure that our residents understand what is happening on their streets, what changes are going to be made, are able to give feedback. That is an aspect that I'm really excited to really do some more crafting on in committee. I've talked with the Director of Mobility, and we are planning to have regular working sessions to hash out any confusions or specifics that come up in committee. And so far as the triggers in the law, what triggers for example, the renovations to sidewalks when major road construction is done. But at the end of the day, this ordinance is about making sure our residents are safe, that we no longer have cyclists who are injured or lose their lives because of poor infrastructure. And I'm really excited for the path forward and to make sure that we have a law as good as our values on this front, and that we do so in a way that brings this council together and brings our community together as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the good councilor at large, thank you for bringing this. You mentioned the collaboration and that you've spoke with the Director of Mobility. I'm glad to hear that. And just purely from a sort of practical standpoint, anticipating this to go to the Committee on Legislative Matters, have you had conversations with the Solicitor's Office on this through the President?
Through the President, I emailed the Solicitor's Office in November of last year about this with a long list of questions. I have spoken with them a number of times about what powers specifically the council can act upon in terms of how specific we can get, whether we can, mandate that we have bicycle traffic signals or how we prioritize different streets. The bicycle network plan is very helpful for us because it comes with its own prioritization and it provides us an anchor to allow changes as the city finds better practices or realizes, well, maybe our data from a couple years ago is not relevant 5 years from now. I've talked with, just to be clear, mobility, engineering, DPW, hoping to talk with parking, and I believe that the city departments are very on board with this. There are some details that need to be worked out, but that will happen both in and out of committee.
Okay, thank you for that. So I guess if it's anticipating, as I said, this will be, or maybe I'll move for this to be sent to Legislative Matters, but let's, for the sake of formality, formally send a copy to the Solicitor's Office with a request to review and provide feedback at a future Legislative Matters meeting.
Councilor Burnley.
Happy for that to be the case. I do want to reiterate, because maybe I wasn't quite as specific as I should have been, perhaps. They have this exact language, and I have spoken to them about it. They've given feedback about, with certain questions about, like, well, yeah, with certain questions, which I'm which I may be able to share with you. We'll see. But
through the President to the Councilor, totally appreciate that. This is more just sort of a formality so that they sort of officially have it on record that this is something we're going to want to have them come to Legislative Matters to weigh in on, trying to just, that was always the practice in the past. I think we've gotten away from that the past few years for whatever reason, so I'm just trying to make sure we let them know we're going to want to hear their input. So thank you.
Thank you. I will just add, I am enormously grateful that we are now at a position where we can start considering this ordinance. This is something that I have looked forward to for many, many, many years. Later on tonight's agenda, we're going to have an opportunity to endorse the Bike Network Plan as a council. And this is something that I just could not be more committed to the work. I also want to acknowledge this is an enormously complicated piece of legislation, and I'm very thankful to the members of the Legislative Matters that are going to take this up. It clearly will have, this is not something that's going to pass in a week, right? These are going to be complex and nuanced conversations with our staff, with our solicitor's office. So I look forward to seeing what the committee comes up with. And thank you, Councilor, for submitting this. That is referred to Legislative Matters with a copy to the Solicitor's Office.
And item 4.35 is an order by Councilor Burnley that the Director of Planning, Preservation, and Zoning discuss with this council the potential benefits and detriments of removing all parking minimums.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, no doubt, many of my colleagues have heard from a number of residents that there is a deep desire amongst a section of our city to remove parking minimums from our zoning. I by no means want to present this as a clear-cut, everyone supports this kind of idea. There are pros and cons to this, and I would love to hear from our administration what they think those pros and cons are, what progress we can make in our zoning around this. And how we can continue to move from a car supremacist, car-dependent society and city to one where all modes are respected and provided equity in terms of road and sidewalk use.
Thank you. We'll submit this, we'll refer this to land use. I'd like to co-sponsor it. I'll also just say for the record, this is something that I have submitted in previous years for us to do this. And I think this is something that I personally am convinced that we should do this citywide, but I believe this is one of the most counterintuitive policy discussions, and it is really important that we communicate clearly with the public about what this means. And just because this is the first time it's coming up this term, I think it's important that we all recognize this is just to say that we are not forcing people to build parking that doesn't need to be built. That is what the policy is. It is not saying you can never build parking. It is saying we're not going to force you to build parking at a certain level. So I just think that it's important we remember the general public, I think, gets very, very understandably kind of confused about some of these conversations and what some of the language means. Councilor Wilson?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleague at large for bringing this forward. This is something that we hear about a lot. And yes, it is pointed out frequently that the majority, I won't say vast majority, the majority of the city already is not subject to parking minimums. But Councilor Klingon and I saw this, the interesting way this can play out where development is sort of on the edge of the walk shed. We had a developers point out, well, we're right on the edge, like this shouldn't really count, like this should help us get, waivers. Basically, it gets used, the fact that you're on the outskirts of a walk shed. So yeah, I'm here for that conversation. I'm eager to hear the details of that, and I'll be following it closely.
I think it's maybe even worth bringing up a former colleague of ours, a counselor who served with us before, wanted to remove her driveway because her family didn't have a car and she wanted to turn it into space for kids, and she couldn't. She was legally prohibited from doing that because there was a mandatory minimum amount of parking spaces. Those are the types of situations that we're talking about. So this is referred to land use, please.
And that brings us to item 6A, a report of the Committee on Finance, a meeting on September 26, 2023.
Councilor Wilson.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee met on Tuesday night with all 5 members present, covering a packed 17-item agenda in an efficient 93 minutes. Many of the items before us were relatively straightforward, and the committee had few or no questions in some cases on those items. All items were unanimously recommended for approval by you all tonight with one exception. I'll get into that shortly. Since the meeting notes really accurately capture all the procedural stuff from Tuesday, I just want to highlight a few things for everyone. We recommend that you approve an extension of the contract with Warner Larson for an additional 3 years for the redesign of Dilboy Auxiliary Field. For those who don't know the site, this is the baseball diamond and grass field to the south of Dilboy Pool and the tennis and basketball courts there. I talked about the importance of renovating this field, both to give us another quality grass athletic facility in the city and for stormwater management and flooding mitigation purposes. The site currently contributes to flooding in the area, including on Route 16, because of the soil compaction that's happened there over decades. So I expressed my delight at seeing this project being taken off the back burner where it's been since COVID hit. I know Portland Loos, the brand name of those outdoor standalone public restrooms, are a major area of interest to this council. We previously heard that these could be installed during this current construction season, but we heard from Finance Director Richards of Infrastructure and Asset Management due to some lengthy negotiations with the manufacturer, and he specifically cited their request for payment terms that weren't compatible with Mass General law. We've only recently finalized the contract with them, so these 3 Portland Loos are being manufactured now, and we're given an April 1st ETA for fulfillment and told installation is being coordinated with that expected delivery date to ensure those go in as quickly as possible once we have those on hand. We got a very encouraging update, particularly for residents of Wards 1 and 4. It turns out the persistent advocacy by city staff, and especially Councilors McLaughlin and Klingon, and our state delegation on behalf of constituents, has resulted in a $250,000 earmark from the state for the study and design of sound panels along Interstate 93. Director Rawson told us the city's going to be working with MassDOT as the process starts with the preliminary work. Councilor Klingon gave some background on the engineering challenges given the elevated interstate coupled with the state highway below at ground level in his ward. But the grant was very welcome news to the committee, I would say. We heard there's no firm established timeline for the process, but Director Rawson indicated this first phase should be underway early next year, and typically similar studies have taken 9 to 12 months, then with a years-long construction process hopefully to follow. And then, while taking up a request from Fleet to purchase 7 new police vehicles to replace older vehicles using capital project stabilization fund monies, we went deep on fleet purchases in general. Councilor Scott in particular had a number of questions and concerns about the continued wait for a van for our animal control officer, that they really need to do their work. It was explained to us by Director Spur-Knight of DPW and Fleet Manager Morehouse that 3 DPW vehicles in that original fleet order that we heard about during budget season have been delivered already, while others, including that van for the animal control officer, are awaiting delivery from the dealer to the dealer from the factory. We were informed by Captain DiGregorio of the police department that we have an opportunity for the overdue replacement of these older police vehicles by purchasing 7 in-stock Ford Police Interceptor hybrid vehicles, avoiding the dreaded supply chain issues in this case. In terms of when we could take receipt of these 7 new police vehicles, we were told they would still need some customization, and that process would take months. In the end, the committee voted 4-1 to recommend approval tonight. And finally, I'll just add that Councilors Kelly and Scott did request some additional supporting documentation ahead of tonight's meeting from the police department related to 2 grants from the Boston Mayor's office. I'll leave to them to speak to whether they're satisfied with the documentation that was provided them over the past 48 hours, but I ask that you accept this report as submitted. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the point that was just referenced right there, this was on a number of grants that are being provided through the Urban Area Security Initiative. That's the Department of Homeland Security funded, say, master surveillance organization. Now, there's part of my concern here is because we found out in the last 2 weeks that there are grants that we apply for and that come with conditions. They have very complete packets that, for example, we can find if it requires a quota system be implemented as part of the grant, or whether it requires our cooperation in interlinking with CopLink, which is a regional gang database. So these award letters didn't have anything of the sort. I was looking for more information there. Some more information was provided. In particular, it was revealed that these are part of allocations that were made by UASI back in 22, and that on request from the police department, they can draw down funds from that for various purposes. I was provided with a fairly long report of the FY22 funding priorities that came out of UASI and the FY23 plan as well, which just basically enumerates what UASI set aside, but not necessarily any of the terms or conditions that we're used to seeing with grants. The other thing that made this a particularly sensitive issue is that we discovered that the gray key surveillance technology that would be used to crack phones that previously we had an impact report on, and in order to use it, we would need to get a warrant and then get authorized and go to the Attorney General's office to use the copy that they have there for legitimate purposes, that now there will be one of those sitting in the Somerville Police Department headquarters, just available for folks to use. And that not only that, but it was obtained not through a grant approval, but simply through the process of having Boston Office of Emergency Management buy the thing and then give it to us, which somehow circumvents our need as a city council to approve a grant acceptance. So I wanted to put a little bit more scrutiny on this particular type of transaction. I have some materials. I can't say that I'm entirely satisfied with the response. In particular, I was vexed after having had a very direct conversation with the representatives from the police department and inviting them and having a commitment to have them call me the following morning to help walk through the information that I was looking for, hopefully to spare everybody the time and game of telephone, that they were told by the administration that they did not need to contact me. And so we end up in a situation where we are right now, where I don't have the documentation I was looking for. We lost valuable time in that kind of runaround. So I would be fine severing these items and sending them back to committee. But again, I'm just one person. I do have ongoing questions about these particular grants in this funding pathway. But I also leave it to my colleagues. If they are content with the level of information provided, then so be it. Thank you.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. So to Councilor Scott's point, we, in good faith, I think the committee voted to approve these items with an expectation that documents would be provided to us by today. The administration over and over again said that they would do their best. And I think, I will speak for myself, was very clear that if the documents were provided, I wouldn't be able to support them tonight. Item 23-1262 does have a document provided that does satisfy at least what my interests were in terms of an itemized receipt of the wireless mics and the headset helmet kits. So, personally, I would feel comfortable moving forward with that item. But item 23-1267, which is a $75,000 grant for supplies to do sustainable upgrades. There's no documentation provided. It does say that the grant has to be used by June of 2025, which implies that a grant application was submitted. Typically with these types of UASI state police grants, there is a worksheet or a workbook that's provided that breaks down the costs of what you're going to spend the grant money on. So somewhere in this building or another building, there's a document that says exactly what the $75,000 is going to be used for. So I'm happy to sever this item in particular and send it back to committee until we can get the documents that we were promised on Tuesday. We have till 2025 to spend this money anyways, so I'm not particularly concerned about this delaying any process, but I do think for transparency purposes, it's important that this council live up to the vote that we took on Tuesday, but also that the administration properly document these items. This has been an issue for as long as I've been on the Finance Finance Committee. I have asked for grant applications. They exist. You have to apply with an application to get a grant awarded to you. A standardized grant award letter from the state is not actual information about how we're going to spend free money. I understand that it's free money, but it's still money that could be used for any number of things. So I would just ask that item 23-1267 be severed. Councilor Scott, I'm happy to agree to disagree, but I do feel satisfied with 23-1262 being approved tonight because they did provide an itemized receipt.
I have two questions. Councilor Kelly, can you repeat the number of the item that you would like to sever?
Yeah. Let me just, I'll pull it up in the agenda so that folks can see it exactly.
Right. I believe it is 23-1263, $75,000 sustainability upgrades.
I'm so sorry if my numbers were wrong.
Okay.
My brain and numbers don't go well. It is 23-1263 is the item I'd like severed so that we could send it back to committee so that we can wait on the actual documentation. There is a partner item which ends with a 2. That one I'm fine on.
Okay. On the motion to sever, I have a question, a follow-up for Councilor Scott. I had seen your agenda item about Gray Key. I appreciate what you said. Is that involved in this item?
No, just part of what had my antenna up, sir.
Okay. So is there any of the items before us now that have to do with a new version or a new access to Gray Key circumventing our STIR?
No, actually, the new hardware that would just be on site has, as far as I can tell, already been procured and delivered.
Thank you.
So.
Councilor Kelly.
The only item that has to do with Gray Key that would be on the agenda tonight is the minutes from the Legislative Matters meeting, but there is no approval of what we're doing with Gray Key. But that would be the item in the agenda that addresses Gray Key.
Thank you. Thank you both for this. This is helpful to me. On the motion to sever, do we need to roll call that?
Yeah, motion to sever and refer to finance if you want to do them in one fell swoop.
Okay. Is there discussion on that motion before we take a vote to sever and refer to Finance Committee? Okay.
On the motion, so this will be for item 23-1263 to sever that from the Finance Committee report and refer it back to the Committee on Finance. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Yes.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Excellent. So now we have a few roll calls of items before us from the committee.
Mr. President, actually, since we do have a member participating remotely, we've got to take a roll call vote on the committee report before those items are officially before the council.
If you think this is fun, wait till we get to land use, folks.
So on the committee report of September 26th, 2023, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that committee report is approved. And then, yes, indeed, that puts 3 items before the council, and those are items 23-1204, which is $150,000 from the Salary and Wage Stabilization Fund to police to settle litigation. Item 23-1298, which is $513,421 from capital stabilization for 7 police vehicles. And item 23-1351, which is $100,000 from the Encore Artist Stabilization Fund for local cultural grants. And if the council is so inclined, we can take up that roll call vote together.
I see inclination.
Great. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
With sincerest apologies, yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Sure.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, those items are approved. And Councilor Klingon, you would have had to do that one anyway.
Yes, no apologies necessary, Councilor Klingon. These are roll call votes no matter what.
So that will bring us to the next item, which is item 6B, a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, meeting on September 20th, 2023.
Councilor Strezzo.
Committee of Housing and Community Development met on Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. It was held both in person and remote at the same time. We had all committee members present, and we also had a cameo from Ward 5 City Councilor, Councilor Beatriz Gomez Mucad, to discuss some of the Arts in the Armory orders. So we started off talking about, with an update on the current status of residents facing displacement and what the Office of Housing Stability is addressing. And Director Schachter was there in person, and she stated that the city had assisted 249 households with rental assistance during the last fiscal year, and noted that although funding for new applications has nearly run out, an effort is being made to reallocate $3 million in funding approved by the Council for Rental Assistance from the Housing Trust Fund to fund the Flex ARPA rental assistance program. We also have 12 municipal rent vouchers that will be beginning in November 2023. However, the Cambridge Housing Authority has yet to hired a full-time staff member, so there may be a delay in the process. Director Schachter also stated that there have been 117 eviction cases since February, half of which were based on non-payment, a quarter were based on lease violations, and a quarter were no-cause evictions for reasons such as building sales. She added that during the last fiscal year, the department had assisted 182 families facing evictions, so that, we're in September, so that number's down a little. And Director Schachter stated that the department is supporting state-level legislation that will assist renters facing eviction, and we all know about that. So we're going to keep on the momentum. And let's see. We talked a little deeper about that. We also talked about the Armory, the large conversation. It was an extensive conversation, pages long. So, colleagues, if you want to be updated on that, I encourage you to read the notes. We also talked about the current status of Safe Streets and how crossing guards are being staffed. Now we have officially started a new school year. So as of the meeting notes of September 20th, we have 32 crossing guards out of a potential 55 crossing guards that we have the ability to have. And 8 of those crossing guards of the 32 are on job shares. This means they may be able to come in the morning, but they can't come in the afternoon, or they can come to this location, or et cetera. And it has been extremely difficult. The department, let's see who we had, Officer Teves, who is part of the traffic division, explaining that it is really difficult to hire any crossing guards right now, so a lot of intersections just aren't staffed. Not that they wouldn't want that, but that's where we are right now. And so they're trying as hard as they can. We had from HR, both Director Gill and Director Recruitment Director Alves, and they were explaining that they're doing everything they can. They have referral bonuses and making it more marketable. Councilor Pineda Neufeld asked if the department reached out to other communities and organizations for recruitment ideas, and Waleska Alves said that they had. Other communities are experiencing the same crossing guard shortages. And we've talked about solutions of can the positions be modified with the reasons that they can't at this current second. And quite frankly, we're really understaffed in this, and I encourage, if anyone has any leads on, safe traveling in our community and intersections. Oh, one more note that wasn't really in our notes, but I do want to bring up is that McGrath Highway is a state highway, and as we have lots of now children that were crossing to go to the Winter Hill School, they're now crossing to get to the Edgerly, to get to the Winter Hill School. There are no crossing guards at the McGrath location of McGrath and Broadway. We have crossing guards, our regular crossing guards over on Pearl and Broadway, but none on Medford Street. Anyway, but we don't have any on McGrath and Broadway. And Officer Teves had said that, and because I had asked, can we get more crossing guards? Can the state help us? Can we have safer pathways? Because as you see in the morning in McGrath, it is a raceway. It is plenty of people blowing through lights, plenty of people just trying to shave 2 minutes off their commute time, and we're a cut-through city. So the state has continuously pushed back on that, saying that we have the overpass just about 5 blocks far, so there is no current plan to staff any of those corners with a crossing guard. So if that concerns you, upsets you, leaves any thought in your mind about it, please speak out, say something. Please do all you can to get these intersections just safer for kids and parents and guardians and strollers and everyone else crossing to just be able to get around. Thank you. I offer this collection of meeting minutes for the council's approval.
Thank you, Councilor. That committee report is accepted.
Item 6C is a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting on September 21st, 2023.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met that day. Some things were said. I submit this committee report. No. I'll just outline a few things. We did discuss a few items. We did leave, everyone was attendance except for Councilor Gomez-Macard, who had a family obligation. We laid on the table or left in committee 200 and About Road, had a brief discussion about it. I hosted a remote community meeting about it yesterday, hoping to have more community meetings before any decisions made there. We had an item, let's see, we had a downzoning from a residential petition for a UR to an NR situation. This was to help the owner of the property actually add units. It was a strange conversation that several councilors raised concerns about. People questioned whether there's a better way of doing this, a more city-wide and comprehensive way of dealing with this issue. This item was approved 4 to nothing with no votes against. And then we did have an item on 0 White Street Place that was recommended recommended to be discharged with no recommendation because it's a Ward 5 item. We want to make sure we got the Ward 5 council's input on this, so we could take a vote on that tonight. And everything else was left in committee. I submit this committee report to be approved.
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. Councilor Gomez-Macard, did you want to weigh in on this item that's in your ward?
Yeah, so this was actually the original, there was a request to turn this to an MR4 originally, which received extreme opposition from the neighbors. It's a narrow alleyway, and there was a desire to tie it to another lab development that was going to happen to an MR4 that quickly and wisely our planning and ISD folks noted that a heavy lab use was not the intent of MR4, so that project got struck down. At the time, you know, when we had multiple meetings way back when the MR4 with the neighbors, and we had said, look, UR will be fine, because the adjacent property is UR, and there's a slight sliver that is, I think it's NR. It's kind of an oddity of sorts. So I think it is appropriate. I'm wondering if it just could give neighbors, I just put it in my newsletter yesterday, and I wanted to hear back comments, if I can table it for 2 weeks, if that's possible, to have a vote on that. Just to make sure.
I just, in terms of timing, legally speaking, there's no issue with that whatsoever.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing times out or anything like that.
We have reached out, we haven't heard anything. The developer tried to set up a Zoom meeting, folks weren't able, and so we have not heard much. So I just in case anybody out there has I would like to give them the opportunity. I don't think there's 2 weeks is gonna really impact negatively the developer, and it's gonna have a worse impact on the community. That's my perspective.
Certainly, yeah. The committee moved it out of committee without a recommendation specifically for this purpose to hear from the ward councilor. So we'll leave this item on the table till our next meeting. So that leaves one item before us, and we need a roll call on the committee report first.
Exactly right. So the first item now before the committee is the Land Use Committee report of September 21st, 2023. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Yes. Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that committee report is approved, and that does put item 23-1070 before the council for enrollment and ordainment. This is a change to the zoning map to change 113 Prospect Street from UR to NR. On enrollment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Yes. Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is enrolled. And on ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott. Yes. Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is ordained. And item 23-1033 will remain on the table. So that brings the council to item 6D, which is a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on September 19th, 2023.
Councilor Davis.
Mr. President, there's actually 2 committee reports. Could we do them both at the same time? There's 2 committee reports in the, oh, I thought you were the minutes. I apologize. Never mind.
Councilor Davis.
My turn now.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, here we go. Brief report. The Committee on Legislative Matters did meet on, July 12th. Let's change the date. Do I have the wrong meeting here? No. It says July 12th, so that's cool. We'll make sure that's changed. So we didn't take any action, so I'll be brief, but I wanted to point out, just because we've had a lot of conversation about related things this evening, what I think is an ongoing success in the collaboration between the council and the administration, and in this case, the police department, and that is our surveillance technology ordinance. We had 2 items before us, which are surveillance technology impact reports. That is a report that is required that the administration submit to the city council anytime any surveillance technology, as it's defined in the ordinance, is to be used. And we have a conversation, and if the committee or any councilors, for that matter, have questions or concerns or would like to see, as often as the case, would like to see more detail, we ask if they would be willing to resubmit. And effectively what happens is they will then withdraw the earlier submission and submit a new one. We did this a whole bunch of times when the ordinance was first put into place, obviously, because we had a number of surveillance technologies that were in use and that the council ultimately was fine with. The idea here is transparency. And so the 2 that were before us here, one was the solar stick automated parking enforcement, which we're still just getting refined to make sure that it's clear who has access to the data and where that goes. And then the other is the Gray Key digital forensics analysis tool that was mentioned earlier. This is actually technology that for which we already do have an impact report because it is currently available through the Attorney General's office. And as was noted earlier, the department now is bringing will have its own unit that can be used. And we talked about that, you know, the way that access is restricted, and you know, the requirements, as was mentioned, the requirements for a warrant to be able to use it. This can get into a cell phone to, you know, for the purposes of investigation. Both of those remained in committee because we had some requests for more information, and the administration is working on it. So thank you for continuing to be willing to do that. I think it's incredibly, I'm incredibly proud that we have this bit of transparency, that folks can go in and look and see exactly what's being used, how it's being used, what the rules are, what the protections are. And you know, that's not to get to the financing of it, and those are some other questions, which we'll you know, certainly we'll come back around to. But I think this, you know, it's worth noting that everyone here has, you know, over the years, has done a really great job of putting this in place, and I'm just continually tickled when it works the way it's supposed to. So I've had conversations on both of those with the administration. We'll be receiving revised versions with more detail soon, and so I look forward to those. And otherwise, the report is, there was a couple of other items we discussed. The report's clear. Future things that we might be able to do, but more sort of the sausage making rather than actually approving the sausage yet. So we'll look forward to a nice big barbecue when we've gotten future sausages. And with that, I submit the report. I request that the report be accepted as submitted.
Thank you very much, Councilor Davis. And I'll also note on the surveillance technology ordinance. So right now, while we have these wonderful conversations, we have these documents, they're quite hard for the public to find. So there are conversations happening internally about how to kind of centralize that information, and it's my understanding that the clerk's office and our legislative staff is working on a much larger project to bring our ordinances up to a kind of modern website, and it is all of our hope that as part of that there will be a dedicated subset of that for all of the surveillance related stuff, so it will become a lot easier to find in the future. And with that, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, there was also another item discussed in here. Just want to highlight and uplift the voices of residents who supported an initiative I put forward. There's a communication from the Somerville Bicycle, what's it called? Let me make sure. Advisory Committee. We had a discussion about a recent law change that was put in place about how, basically we asked, can residents submit violations of vehicles and bike lanes to 311, and can the administration legally act upon that? The answer, though a bit shaky, was a yes. And I just want to point that out because it was a point of disagreement previously. And we do have a letter here, which I encourage my colleagues to read about, from our residents supporting that effort. So again, just want to uplift the voices of our residents asking for more safety and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, that committee report is accepted.
And item 6E is a report of the Committee on Traffic and Parking, meeting on September 18th, 2023.
Councilor Gomez-Malacad.
So this was an exciting meeting. More importantly, we reviewed the approval of the citywide bicycle network plan. I want to give credit to Councilor Campen, who has been on top of this from the beginning, reminding me of having a public comment period, making sure we were in the agenda as soon as we came back from recess, so thank you for your support in that. As we went through this, you know, we had some questions about, there are streets that are not in the bicycle network plan that might require traffic calming or other issues. How do we bring these forward? Again, 311, petitions. So I brought this in relation to the recent request of Victoria Street, which is not listed as a neighbor way, but it has a concern as a cut through, and I'm sure there are plenty of others out there. I also asked about, I wanted to clarify, this is a plan and what has been done to assess existing conditions, because I myself in a project have run into some issues where the infrastructure is not allowing us to do a raised bike lane as proposed, and they did clarify, they did take the widths of the street. What they didn't do was actually look at all utilities underneath, more detail. So probably giving you more detail than you wanted here. Councilor Ann Campen, I appreciated his comment, this is not about I don't like bikes or I don't like cars. And he asked some very poignant, very important questions about making sure we had protected bike lanes. And he did bring up an important point brought by the bicycle committee, that is that there's no connection, there's not a protected lane in that last stretch of Beacon Street. At the time, Director Rawson explained that the stretch is not in the priority plan. I did emphasize that I do believe part of this bike network plan is that we connect with our adjoining cities, because most of us commuted through multiple cities. And as that, we sort of recommended to be approved. There's a very detailed set of notes, and I just want to emphasize that I think it's really great that we have a plan. And I believe city policy is the common good, and it's about trying to strike a balance. Sorry. We talked about the high visibility bollards in the community path, and we kind of nixed that because the bicycle committee really has said they don't favor this. So we are not pushing that item at the moment. Sorry. I am going to skip the rest. They're very good notes because I'm about to have a coughing fit unless someone says. I just want to compliment our clerk for giving us excellent meeting notes. So I recommend we approve this. Noted. And I think we have to. All right.
Thank you, Councilor. So with the acceptance of this committee report will be the endorsement of the bike plan. Anybody want to give a speech? Great. All right, let's take a vote.
We don't need to, if you prefer to. We can.
No one wants to vote against this. Great. Yes, let's not take the vote now.
So that will bring us to item 7.1.
Mr. President, I'd like to move to waive the readings of items 7.1, 7.2, and 7.4 to 7.12 and ask those be sent to Finance.
Those items are referred to the Committee on Finance.
The next item is item 8.2, an officer's communication from the Fair Housing Commission conveying the fiscal year 2022 Fair Housing Commission annual report.
That item is placed on file with a copy to Housing and Community Development. Let's waive the readings of 8.3 and 8.4 and place those on file.
And item 9.1.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. I'd like to waive the readings and move for approval of items 9.1 through 9.7, as well as 10. Where'd it go? Oh, there you are. 10, 17. If that is okay.
All right. So the next item is item 9.8, a public communication from 4 residents submitting comments regarding item 23-0791, amending the zoning ordinances to include vegetated roofs.
That item is placed on file with a copy to Land Use.
Item 9.9 is a public communication from MassDOT conveying the alteration of a location of a section of state highway.
Interesting. That item is placed on file.
Item 10.1 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Mobility place not a through street signs on the Washington Street side of Franklin and Washington Avenues.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Motion to approve, copy sent to Traffic Commission.
That item is approved with a copy sent to the Traffic Commission.
Item 10.2 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Water and Sewer clean the sewers along Chester Avenue.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Motion to approve.
That item is approved.
Item 10.3 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Chief of Police provide a written explanation and any accompanying documentation of the Police Department's receipt of Gray Key surveillance technology from the Urban Areas Security Initiative, Boston, without requiring a grant acceptance from the City Council.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. President. I mentioned this earlier, but it just seems baffling to me that we can just accept donations of hardware, particularly when it's governed by a surveillance technology impact report process, without having to go through the City Council whatsoever. So I would like to understand what exactly this conduit of equipment and funding sources is, so that I can, if necessary, regulate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think a copy of this should go to Legislative Matters. Thank you very much for doing this. You know, I don't want to speak off the cuff, but the way you describe it does not conform with my recollection of the existing policy that we have for this technology. So I'm very interested in this conversation as well. Thank you.
Item 10.4 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Commissioner of Public Works clear the low-hanging plant growth overhanging the Prospect Street sidewalk over the rail right-of-way opposite the Union Square stop.
Councilor Scott.
Real simple. If you don't want the leaves in your hair, somebody's going to have to cut them. So hopefully somebody can get down there and take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. That item is approved.
Item 10.5 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Director of Inspectional Services issue any appropriate citations for overgrowth at 50 Webster Avenue, blocking the northbound sidewalk, and arrange for the Public Works Department to clear the growth if not removed by the property owner by Friday, September 29th, 2023.
Hear, hear. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This one was especially frustrating because at least in the previous one, there's it's on a bridge that's owned by MassDOT, and the plant might be in somebody else's property, and it's all just a big public right-of-way problem that's hard to figure out who's responsible. This one, we know who's responsible. They have a $1 billion construction project going on, and they cannot keep the sidewalk clear. So I would encourage any help from city departments to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Scott. That item is approved.
Item 10.6 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Commissioner of Public Works clear the weeds and vegetation on the north fence line of the city-owned lot at 217 Somerville Avenue.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. This is one that, you know, again, I mentioned the 217 Somerville Ave lot earlier when speaking to Ms. Rose Caterino, but there are 2 trees starting to grow. Again, I would just love it if the city could maintain the property a little bit. I've gotten complaints from residents in the area because it's starting to impinge on their property and is serving as a haven for rodents. So hopefully approved with a copy to grounds, please.
That item is approved with a copy to the Director of DPW.
Item 10.7 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Director of Engineering, in conjunction with the Mayor, schedule a meeting with the Duck Village and Perry Park neighborhoods about continuing flood problems.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one that, honestly, I have been banging the drum about for a long time. It seems like flooding, to recap anybody who's unclear on the situation, every time we get a major rainstorm, because of the way the hydrostatic system works and because Ward 2 is the lowest point in the city, the sewers back up onto the streets, and then you've got sewage on the sidewalks and in people's yards and in people's basements. And unfortunately, the last time this got any direct attention or community meeting was when we had a flood during an election year. We are in election year. I've been asking for follow-up on this. There are several large stormwater projects that could be helping this, but having another meeting with the neighborhood to talk about those timelines and to get a strong sense of the commitment of the administration to deal with this would be very much appreciated. The folks down in the Duck Village area are feeling a little bit left behind and forgotten. So if we could just approve this and see that it gets to the mayor's office, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
That item is approved.
Item 10.8 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Chief of Police share with this council copies of any reports of noise complaints for Sally O'Brien's at 335 Somerville Avenue during 2023.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can see the ISD records of complaints there, but I cannot see the police ones. I'd just like to make sure I have the full information on the situation down there. Thank you.
Thank you, and I know that many members of the public have been interested in this. I am very pleased to say that we are back to normal at Sally's. The proprietor there had decided to move to 11 p.m. to handle some conversations with neighbors, and their license to have live music has not been altered in any way. They know that they have the support of the city. I want to, I've also had very supportive conversations with the mayor's office on this. So I just want to thank everyone for their work on this and encourage everyone to go down to Sally O'Brien's for live music on Sundays if you like.
Item 10.9 is an order by Councilor Scott that the Director of Inspectional Services, the Chief of Police, and the City Clerk meet with this council to discuss the operation of duly licensed live music venues in the city and the applicability of the noise ordinance as written.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of those things that as I read the noise ordinance, there is a piece in the construction portion which indicates that basically the application of the noise ordinance is not intended to hamper the operation of any duly licensed business in the city, and that consideration of the zones and the neighborhood and the area would be taken into account. It sounds like everybody did a pretty decent, job of, like you said, trying to get the story right and trying to make sure that a business that has been licensed to operate till 1 a.m. for a very long time could go about their business peacefully. But in case there is any misconception or it would not be the first time where we had an ordinance that was interpreted in a way counter to our intent. So I just thought we could bring this into a committee, have a conversation, and make sure everybody's on the same page. It sounds like, Mr. President, you've already had some of those conversations with the administration, so hopefully that'll be a short and very reassuring conversation for the hundreds of people who have sent us an email. Just to be perfectly clear, there is no new curfew on live music. There is nothing the City Council did to create one, and this is just to make sure that everybody up and down the administration is on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a committee that you'd like to have this conversation in?
I would, Willie wants it.
This item is referred to licensing and permits.
Great.
Item 10.10 is an order by Councilor Scott that the City Solicitor and the Director of Planning, Preservation, and Zoning assist in drafting an ordinance amendment prohibiting the placement of transformers and other electrical transmission infrastructure above ground within the city limits without specific approval by a special permit granting authority or other appropriate mechanism.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is something that we have done in a kind of shadow policy realm for a number of years. Most of the projects that this impacts are in mid-rise districts and other places where they have to go through a site plan approval process. And generally, once you have approval to do a project and a plan has been submitted as part of that shows a transformer underground, it is very difficult for you to come back and just make a stealth change to put that transformer somewhere else, put it above ground. For folks at home who may not be aware, the problem is that when you build an apartment building, which is happening a lot, you can't just run that off of the pole out front, which might be 100 years old and has very limited capacity on those pole transformers. So you have to put a large metal box somewhere, and you can either put that on a slab of concrete in the front yard, standing there humming menacingly, or you can put it in a vault underground, which happens on many, many projects all over. It just happens to be a little bit more complicated and a little bit more costly. There are cities and towns all over that have regulated this who do not allow this above-ground infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 100-year mistake, and we can stop making that. So while I had trusted to the shadow policy implementation to the planning department, this particular episode has revealed that on by right projects, particularly this UR project, that's not sufficient. So we need to be explicit about our policy. I'm not sure if the right place to do this is exactly in the zoning ordinance or if it's in the municipal ordinances. I've had some early conversations with Assistant Solicitor Shapiro on it, So I would be inclined to send this to Legislative Matters, unless there's somebody else who wants to call the ball. My goal here is just to take a policy that I think is very sound and to do the absolute minimum to ensure that we don't have more of these above-ground transformers proliferating throughout Somerville and eating up the very limited and precious green space that we are able to negotiate either through neighborhood meeting processes or through our green score.
Thank you very much. That item is referred to Legislative Matters.
Mr. President, as a follow-up here, if I may, I just wanted to say that as I was researching this, it did come to my attention that the right-of-way legislation that I mentioned earlier, Chapter 166, Section 22, also has an extensive subsections, 22A through I, which details, 22A through N, which detail a procedure by which a city or town may prohibit the installation of above-ground transmission lines and may, in fact, even require a program of replacement of those above-ground lines to go entirely underground. So there is a process. As I look at Section 122B, it requires that the planning board make a study or may by any time by resolution call for a public hearing and then put into place a recommendation to do such. So I was just hoping to put in an item requesting the planning board's consideration of a program for prohibition or removal of overhead wires as cited in Chapter 166, Section 22B of Mass General Law. I will reduce that to writing. Thank you.
Excellent.
And that will bring us to item 10.11, a request of the mayor requesting ordainment of an amendment to the zoning ordinances, section 3.1 and 3.2, to permit the house and triple-decker building types without any conditions and to repeal the lot depth dwelling units per lot and development benefits requirements.
Excellent. We'll waive the reading of the next item. It's my understanding that these two items are related to our efforts to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. And as part of that, we'll also be getting rid of the 4 unrelated adults, which is something that we had independently brought up. I believe that that is included in these, and these are referred to land use with a copy to the planning board.
Perfect. Item 10.14 is an officer's communication from the Licensing Commission conveying a change to the rules and regulations of the Somerville Licensing Commission regarding closed captioning.
That item is placed on file.
Item 10.15 is an officer's communication from the Chief of Police conveying supplemental information regarding items 23-1262 and 23-1263, grants from the Boston Mayor's Office of Emergency Management.
That item is placed on file.
Item 10.16 is a new extended operating hours license for Dumpling Garden at 273 Broadway until 2 a.m. for in-store takeout and delivery service.
Seeing no discussion, that item is approved.
We'll send that to licensing and permits.
That is referred to licensing and permits for a hearing.
I know what I did. I take credit. And that brings us to the end of our agenda for the evening, Mr. President.
Excellent. Are there any late items?
Always my favorite question. I see no further items before the council.
All right. We better do a vote before we leave.
We better. So this will be on approval for items 1.3 to 1.4, 4.1 to 4.3, 4.5 to 4.33, 4.35 to 4.36, 5.1, 6B, 6D, 6E, 9.1 through 9.7, 10.1 through 10.10, 10.13, and 10.17, and to place on file items 4.4, 8.2 to 8.4, 9.8 to 9.9, 10.14 to 10.15, and 10.18. One more time.
On those items.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
See.
Councilor Gomez-Moacad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes, please.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, those items are approved and placed on file as indicated.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.
If everyone wants to